transmitted to the translator. Sorry for that delay. Can you hear me in the back this morning? Everybody okay back there? Welcome. Thank you for returning. We're here for the second day of this rate case hearing in case number NEPR-AP-2023-0003. A reminder, please, everybody to get close to the microphone like I'm finally learning how to do now. And announce yourselves maybe for another day or so that the reporter gets to know us all. And is there anybody on the panel that was not here yesterday whom I have to swear? Anybody new? Yes, Mr. Gonzalez, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony that you will provide today is true, correct, and based on your own and personal knowledge, and that to the best of your understanding, none of the information you will provide today is misleading or untruthful? Say yes out loud. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Welcome. All right, colleagues, before we turn to the next major topic on the agenda, which is distribution, I have some questions for the panel in 3 areas, and I'm going to ask those questions now. The first area is on the arborist issue. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you today, Mr. Burgermeister and Mr. Melendez? How are you, gentlemen, today? All right, welcome back. I want to talk to you about the arborist issue. I want to talk to you about federal funds eligibility with respect to 3 or 4 specific lines. And then I want to talk to you about the vegetation management contracts. Is each one of you available and familiar with those topics? All right. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Mercado.
Yes, if I may, Margarita Mercado for the record, regarding the vegetation management contracts, we would like to request that that topic be discussed tomorrow so that Mr. Burgermeister has a bit more time to review the contracts.
Okay. He has the questions that we sent last night, correct? But he probably had something else to do that evening than spend the evening reading every one of the 500 pages. All right. So first thing in the morning tomorrow? What's tomorrow? No, first thing in the morning tomorrow is renewable integration. All right, well, let's check in at the end of the day and we'll make a specific slot for it.
Thank you.
Does that work out for you, gentlemen? Mr. Burgermeister? Go ahead, go ahead. You want to whisper to her or you want us all to listen? Yes, I sent a note to your council this morning. It's going to be very short. Why don't we see how it goes? All right. I understand that. Let's see how it goes. If you need more time, we'll give you more time. All right? All right. You ready now? Can we start? Okay, thank you. Who's going to talk to me about arborists?
I will.
All right, thank you. You saw these questions perhaps from Mr. Victor Gonzalez yesterday?
Yes, I have seen them this morning.
All right, so let me ask you these questions, please, because I'm interested in them as well. First of all, remind us again what you said about LUMA's use of arborists.
So Luma has arborists on staff, and we talked about qualified licensed arborists. I think where things may have gotten misconstrued yesterday, as I said, there is a challenge of hiring arborists.
Okay, hold on. If you're going to refer to arborists, I need now to understand whether they're licensed or there was some other adjective that you used. So please be very clear.
We are challenged in hiring licensed arborists. So we do have a program internally where we do develop people. So that's all I spoke of yesterday. We actually have arborists in Luma. We have the arborists that we require to do the work. It is not stopping us from doing any work.
Are you saying that the absence of licensed arborists has not impeded the progress that you had otherwise planned on making? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. We have licensed arborists. We have the
right. You don't have to repeat yourself. What I'm asking you is the absence of licensed arborists is not impeding your progress as you have planned the progress. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I don't mean to be abrupt, but I'm trying to save time today. So
understand.
Thank you. In other words, the absence of a lack of licensed arborists is not affecting the efficiency of vegetation management. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Well, then why do we bother with having them licensed? You know?
This is where I think the clarification is. The licensed arborists, we do have licensed arborists, and they are the ones that are helping us progress. The lack of that made it challenging to get to that point has not slowed us down.
Do you think it will slow us down at some point in the future?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because we have that development program internally. We also have contractors that we're hiring that again have licensed qualified arborists, and we don't see that being a major impediment going forward. No.
Well, do you see it to be a minor impediment?
It does create extra work. It's not like we just go out and hire them, and maybe bringing that up yesterday as a challenge, and what has been a challenge that we've worked through, and we have a process and a plan, and we are actively dealing with that. Is not slowing us down.
All right. Okay, let's talk about this federal funds set of questions. So again, Mr. Melendez, you let us know if there's anything that you need more time, and we'll find a way to make it happen. Okay. So do you have your own computer today?
I have my computer today. I don't have any files other than my testimony in front of me.
Okay, so you don't have 205, Exhibit 205 on your computer?
I don't.
Okay, well, let's get
all the filings.
All right, just it's a yes or no. All right, let's get it up there, clerk, please. In the meantime, without my naming a particular line, can you talk to me about why Luma, with at least one of the rebuilds of transmission, why you think it's not eligible for funding under the FAST program? Or do you need to see the line?
Yeah, I'll have to see the line.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
All right, hold on a second.
Okay. And thank you.
Do you have 205 up there now?
I don't. It's over there, but not in front of me. I can't see it from here.
Well, are we getting it up there? Okay, everybody relax, all right? And I can't ask you any contract questions while we're waiting around? All right.
If you want to articulate your question in preparation for the information, I'll appreciate. So
well, what I want to know is with respect to line 8700 rebuild, why you have it in non-federal capital rather than in FEMA. Is that knowledge that you have?
I do have knowledge of some of the components of that to the wine, right?
Okay, why don't you tell me what you can tell me?
So in essence, as we transition, there are some lines that we believe that are essential they're essential to be able to be restored sooner rather than later, in which we cannot wait the 2 years that typically would take. In order to answer this specific,
Okay, so hold on. I want to stop you right there. So now we're back to this very important distinction that we are learning about. That the reason why you have put it in non-federal capital is not because you think it is ineligible. It's because you don't want to wait.
that is correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that is one second. That has been a source of confusion for my people.
Oh.
And that's what I want to make sure is that they're wondering, why don't you understand eligibility? And this is not about eligibility. It's about criticality. Is that correct?
You got it, sir. Yes.
All right.
that is
I interrupted you. Was there more that you wanted to say?
that the same holds true for several of the other lines, in which there are structures that are failed, the structure of failing that could and should be moved through the process is timing,
All right.
criticality.
Now, do you have 205 up there? I'm sorry for causing this delay. I thought we had this set up ahead of time, but my fault. Take your time.
Yep.
Tell me that you have a 205 up there. Exhibit 2.05.
Yes, it is in front of me.
Okay, and hopefully it's the same exhibit that I have. And can you go to line Excel row 123?
Yes, which is a line 8700.
Exactly. And is the answer you just gave me the answer you would give if I specified 8700?
That is correct.
Okay. Now let's look at line 110. And this line relates to distribution pole replacement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And could you explain why that item is listed as NFC rather than FEMA?
There are two components in what I'm about to answer. One has to do with when you have a pole that failed under that program, we have to utilize non-federal capital to replace that pole with a newer pole, and we will actually upgrade the pole. So the funds associated with that, and there are funds associated with criticality, very similar to the other elements for which a criticality to get those projects done, those replacements done, overrides the pursuing the federal funding from a timing perspective.
Okay, I want to make sure I understood that last answer because I thought there were two parts to it. The last part of your answer resembled the last line that we talked about,
Correct.
that it wasn't a question of ineligibility, it was a question of criticality.
That is correct. Same.
But I thought I heard at the very beginning of your answer that maybe there was a portion of it that that was eligible. Did I misunderstand?
So the first part I'm referring to, I'm going to use the word restored,
Yes.
which means a structure failed this morning and needs to be restored. We use non-federal capital to restore that pole. And let's use the example of a wood pole, and we are going to put a steel pole.
Okay, so
That capital comes out of that to restore failed equipment in a day-to-day operations.
that's ineligible.
Now, the answer is when you're talking about legibility, I'm trying to make sure I'm cautious on answering your question. The word could be illegible, but I cannot guarantee it would be, depending on what is it that we're replacing and how it is being replaced. It is very difficult, like I see, to be able to make a determination right here on the spot that everything is eligible, because that is not the case. There is a process you need to follow. Depending how the work is done, there are specific requirements within the eligibility process within the grant that need to be met for the funds to be able to be released and cover eligible work.
Okay.
In the first part of this, a restoration, it could be, if it is done to the level of, and the replacement that we're doing is under the specific project and grant that we're pursuing for that region. It could. I'm not saying it would. It could, but the funds that are allocated in there cover two main drivers that we're doing is criticality of things that are near failure, for which we cannot wait, but still could do engineering and plan for it within a very small window of time, or the break fix, when something has to be restored because you have a distribution pole that failed. That is what those funds are there for.
Here's what I understand, is that with respect to row 110, which is what we were just talking about, correct?
Yes,
It's possible that some elements of that work could be eligible, but criticality overrode that possibility in terms of your decision making. Is that a fair summary?
it's a fair summary.
Okay.
And then the second part I would like to add, when the work gets done, could be pursued as completed work for future years and enter into the process to ensure dollars from the grant could cover that eligible work.
All right. So you haven't given up on the possibility of federal funding with respect to the item at row 110.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Nice and clear today. How are we doing?
We're doing great.
All right. Let's take a look at line 88. It's the last one. You see line 88?
It's not on my screen yet. Yes.
Okay. Are you there, sir?
Yep.
Okay. And what is this line? How do you name this?
Is 4500 Canas TC, this is a transmission center, to the La Rambla sectionalizer.
Okay. Can you give us an explanation now of why that item is listed as NFC rather than FEMA?
I will say the same criticality that we're making mentioned, the specificity of the project, I do not know it at this time to be able to answer with that level of granularity, but the same criteria that we just been discussing is what would apply to it. It could be more than one component. Occasionally you have components that are not in service, so I am not necessarily up to date whether or not this is a particular line. It could be or section that is out of service for which a pole replacement will actually allow it to be brought back.
You're going to be here for the federal funds panel, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you don't look like you have a very happy look on your face.
I
but-
always have a happy look and a smile on my face. I'll be here anytime you need me.
Well, we need you handling the lines too. Okay. I want to ask you a more general question now about federal funds, and then we'll be finished with this subject, okay? You're familiar with the $10 billion that FEMA has obligated as a result of the Hurricane Maria event, correct?
Yes,
All right, that's what I want to talk to you about for a second. That grant is not tied to individual facilities. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And so transmission and distribution reconstruction projects are eligible for coverage under that grant,
Associated with the grant, yes.
as long as it's connected to Hurricane Maria.
Associated with, correct. That's when I said associated with the grant is the actual intent is, but as long as it's associated with Irma and Maria.
Okay, thank you. Well, this question is a very general question. But can you help me understand, what's your understanding of the scope of allowability, the scope of eligibility? Putting aside criticality, is there a way that you can define for the commissioners what is the scope of the types of projects that are eligible under this grant?
I actually attested to that. It is part of my test. And what
Take a shot at it.
Just
Right?
a shot at it. It is directly associated with an incident or an event. That is right. You know that it was impacted by it, and it was restored partially, and you have to do permanent work. Permanent work means that you're going to do upgrades to either mitigate or associated with ensuring that the actual asset is not operating up to its code. So that is a eligibility criteria. Then within the grant, and I'm trying to summarize it for you, there are opportunities to ensure that you are identifying assets that are because it's a system, right? It's not just one component, it's an entire system. From when you're making the upgrade, ancillary assets connected to it could actually be impacted and will be eligible to be able to erect a structure, as an example, that was impacted, and the ones in each side may have not been, but in order to erect that structure, the scope needs to include those assets. That's part of eligibility process in which we demonstrate that that is the case using engineering practices, engineering studies to ensure that it is justifiable and reasonable because of the association with the project that you are defining. That's
Okay.
a way to, we'll call it include, because it's a system, right? It's not just a component-based replacement. That's how the grant is written. That does not mean that every asset on the island is in the scope of this grant.
Okay.
And I'll give you one simple example. We have a gas insulating substation, which is a facility that was not impacted by Hurricane Maria, that has failed. Parts of the interconnection to that facility are connected with assets that did fail associated with the impact and has facility. That does not make the gas insulation substation eligible for replacement because it cannot be directly associated to. So each one of the projects, as we are doing the detailed definitions and descriptions of it, looks to establish that scope, where FEMA then does a review for ensure it is eligibility is correct and appropriate and reasonable. Then the project gets obligated. They are designing that we need to provide. We have to be able to demonstrate the value. So there's some preliminary design that needs to be done and go through the phases of the project. And there's some other reviews that happens to the process. But in general, answering your question, that is the concept that you need to stay within to ensure these federal dollars that were designated for Hurricane Maria, for, in this case, $10 billion that you mentioned, are appropriately allocated. I'll further add for your understanding that there is an allocation has been, we'll call it agreed upon through the process on how much is destined for each one of the subcomponents, such as there's about $4, I can't recall the exact number. It is on so each of the 10 billion gets subdivided up, and we're working towards that base allocation that was established when all the destination of the 90% of that grant is for TND. So we're working within those boundaries, and whenever there is an opportunity, we always will pursue to include this into the grant because we want to relieve pressure from rates. There is no moment in time that LUMA has stopped being committed to do what
I'm not asking you about your commitment. You've
I'm
answered
saying.
the question.
We are working through that general concept that I just described, and I know I'm oversimplifying this, but at least give you a sense of the process. Nonetheless, we continue having situations in which they are assets currently in service that are continue being stressed, for which we have a responsibility to maintain the stability of the system, that we have to replace them in near term and not wait for the process I just described to finish up. So there's a balance in criticality and impact to the system.
You don't have to go backwards. You explain that to me.
That's
right.
But
Thank you.
That closes it out for us.
So this is what I'm understanding from, my understanding is limited, but this is what I'm understanding is that one cannot just look at a spreadsheet and see a designation of NFC versus FEMA and think that there was a clear black-white choice here, that there's a very specific asset by asset, project by project, even sub-project by sub-project fine-tuning that has to occur in order to please FEMA make the money available, that it's a lot more complex engineering-wise than simply looking at a spreadsheet and seeing two categories and complaining that the category that we're in isn't the right category. That's what I'm taking away from what you just said.
The best explanation I have heard in 7 months.
I'm sorry?
The best explanation I have heard in 7 months.
Well, sometimes it pays to be a little dumb, and that's me. All right, thank you for that for now. We'll revisit this possibly when you return on the federal funds panel. I really don't think there's a need for redirect. Do you, Ms. Mercado? Well, make it sure. Go ahead. Ready?
Margarita
Mr.
Mercado.
Hempling,
I'm sorry?
I had Mr. Brady for the bondholder group.
Go
Had Good morning, Mr. Melendez. Corey Brady, Weil, Gotchall, and Anges on behalf of the bondholder group intervening in this proceeding. Do you recall a moment ago giving an example to Mr. Hempling of a hypothetical project that could be eligible for federal funds, but was done with NFC?
Yeah, that's a hype that I just said that. Yes.
And that was where a wood pole failed, and so you replaced it with a steel pole.
Yes.
Now, as we discussed yesterday, there's a waiver of the Stafford Act requirement that assets be replaced to the same condition that they were in prior to the event, right?
Yes, but it's in association to the hurricane event, a declared emergency event. What I make reference to at this moment and the example I gave is a day-to-day operational failure of an asset that is not within the confines of a declared event by the federal government.
Okay, so that would be a non-disaster related failure.
That is correct.
And if there was a disaster related failure, like in that hypothetical, you would be able to use federal funds to put in the steel pole because of that Stafford Act waiver.
If it was during that time related to the disaster and it failed during that time, that will be true.
Thank you.
Thank you for that efficient cross-examination. Ms. Mercado.
Mercado, for the record. Mr. Melendez, we're just answering questions about federal funding eligibility, and you use the term there could be eligible. There are projects or activities that could be. Could you explain what you mean by could?
And when I say could, it's the fact that, as I was just answering the question that was asked of me at this moment, is there is a correlation of a particular replacement that needs to be made. And when I say could, it's the fact that LUMA actually evaluates the projects and submits it and puts it in front of FEMA to ensure we pursue that funding from eligibility and ensuring that interpretations are made appropriately so the funds can be recovered. There's always that opportunity, right? Because we're using an example of some explaining, there are very variables of what really happens. And that is the reason I use the word could, right? Because I cannot be definite because I do not have all the facts surrounding my response, but just to provide an ample view to the question that was asked of me today.
Thank you. Who makes the final decision whether a project or activity is eligible for federal funding?
Federal government, FEMA.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. That completes the follow-up from yesterday. I promised that at various junctures, I would let you know what our expectations were for subjects for the day. And the expectation and the need is that today we cover distribution area on the agenda. Also the Energy Control Center agenda, and if we can do that and get done by 5, that will leave my evening free to prepare for tomorrow. So let's do the best we can to do that, and I'll turn it over now to Mr. Schiffman to do the questions on distribution. Mr. Schiffman. Oh.
Good morning, Mr. Melendez.
Good morning.
In this series of questions, I'll be referring again to Exhibit 2.05, although, most of the questions are just trying to get a better understanding both of the process used to develop the budgeted expenditures and then also to get, I think on the distribution side, at least for the non-federal capital, it's pretty much all, account categories as opposed to specific projects. So trying to get, some understanding of specific expenditures or so that's the overall context.
Thank you.
If you could just describe generally, the basis, starting with distribution grid reliability category, cap estimates on the distribution grid reliability category.
So in the non-federal capital, I'll summarize it very briefly. I just explained, Scott, a little bit on the FEMA side. What doesn't fall into that category, then LUMA will pursue executing work to the non-federal capital. At the same time, we are seeing on the grid modernization on that category, there's a lot of automation opportunities. Our customers are seeing, we have circuits that are called worst performing circuits. In under that general category, we'll actually begin doing work to replace and add automations on the system to reduce the impact that we're having every time we have an event on our system. It's a way of how do we actually allocate funds to that particular subcategory.
Right. I've heard a lot about the worst performing feeder. I assume that that's a dynamic list because, Luma's been talking about that since since before you took over. So I assume that that's a list that basically changes as feeder repairs are made. Is that accurate?
That is the expectation. We're also seeing this, that circuits, right, because it's based on events, right? You're seeing based on the dependability of the assets. I would like to help you from an understanding view. When the system was restored during Hurricane Maria, there was no standard on how to do it, right? So there's a lot of pieces of equipment out there that we cannot determine by line of sight that they are actually in conformance with code. And I'll use the word jumpers just to give you an idea. Whatever was available is what was used, which means we're seeing a lot of failures on conductor-related items on a circuit that are then leading to have a lot of worse performing circuits operations throughout. And so we're pursuing automation to isolate, to start making investments that are helping reduce the impact we're having to our customers. And at the same time, continue pursuing federal funding for additional work on those circuits. So it's a balance between the two, but it gives you a sense of the asset conditions and why this list has some dynamic in it.
In terms of the asset conditions, again, at the time that Luma took over the system, I think in the first budget that was put before PREP, we had, quite some extensive discussion about an inspection program on the feeders. My understanding or recollection is Luma had developed a 3-year program that during that time frame, all of the feeders were supposed to be inspected. So can you give me some insights into where that program stands?
Given that question, if I may, is more in the operational side of the inspections, or are you referring to a capital? I want to make sure that I know so I can get assistance from my colleague on routine inspections. Are you referring to capital inspections or referring to operational inspections?
My recollection is it's both. The idea was that anytime you visited a particular facility, there would be at least a visual inspection and documentation of it, and then that was sort of the initial phase of the inspection program, and then there was also a systematic plan for doing more detailed inspections, engineering physical inspections of each feeder, and as I recall, that was supposed to be a 3-year program. So I'm just trying to understand
that definitely. Let me answer the question from a lens of my role. And if I may, I'll pass it on to Kevin just to give you a little brief, right? As we are actually assessing the system to define projects, we are indeed doing that assessment and understanding more in detail what are the asset conditions are, making decisions also what type of projects that particular facility is going to need. When I say facility, I'm referring to the entire distribution feeder and anything associated with it, the laterals, everything on the secondary, all the way down to the customer. So there is a broad spectrum of these things. As decisions are made along the way, then we continue doing more detailed assessments of what are the asset conditions, and we'll manage that engineering approach to maximize the dollars and minimize the time in which we have to execute. So the total physical inspection of every service drop, every pole, every conductor at the engineering level is an exhaustive, very difficult endeavor. So we have to manage, right, a little bit of that from an engineering to upgrade view. From an operations day-to-day, I'll turn it over to Kevin to help what else happens and how we collect additional data in engineering from his group.
Sure. This leads to a similar discussion we had yesterday on the high-level assessments. I recall that's so what you're referring to in that first 3 years was exactly that. And that is very quick visual it gains you information certainly on the system, but not the in-depth to be able to manage what type of major project work you necessarily have to do, but does give you a sense of the a better sense of the state of the system at that point in time. What we're doing now is we talk about the worst performing feeders. That is a big driver for us. There's where we do a much more in-depth. We know this feeder is not performing well. Now we go through it, do a much more detailed inspection of it, thermography, get down as much as we possibly can, looking at the insulators and working our way through. So we get a scope of work that we can do repairs on that system to get it off the worst performing feeder list. Now, as we also talked about yesterday, that worst performing feeder list is a pretty small number in comparison to the grand scale of things. Our target as part of the optimal budget is to get that level of inspection on a 5-year cycle, which we are not even close to doing that right now.
So in the 3 years, you've done the high level. I mean, I don't want to get into that whole thing about level of inspection, but you've done at least the initial inspection on all the feeders, or is that still in process?
No, that's correct.
And then the more detailed has been on, I guess, problem feeders that have been identified through that visual or through operational issues. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's driven by the amount of impact that we've been having on customers on that feeder. So it's not necessarily about from the high level assessment hasn't necessarily determined which are the worst performing. That comes from live data on the performance of that feeder.
More operational type data.
Yes.
And then how does that inspection process and the operational data, how is that informed, I guess, both, because as I understand the distribution level assets that are currently in the FEMA pipeline, it's not pole by pole, it's basically groups of poles or circuits or even areas, right? And then
Yes.
Yes.
and so help us understand, I guess, how the interaction between how you identified the ones that you did go to seek federal funding at, a semi-aggregated level, and then how that process is informing the specific non-federal capital expenditures that you're proposing here.
That's a great question, because it dovetails on what he just explained on the level of detail assessment. We work with the operation team to inform our decision-making process and inform as they are finding to ensure that the scope that we have defined for that, let's say, group, or I use the word district, or the area that we are scoping, that the work can be included there, and then make a determination based on the estimations that were done in the work. Can that be included through the obligation process? If we actually have those projects obligated, then we know we're going to be executed, so we go and execute it. If we know that that project is in the pipeline of obligation in future years, then we'll discuss the criticality and the value of taking the non-federal capital dollars and make that replacement or partial replacement, part of the replacement, and manage that scope. There is a reconciliation as we go through this that has to take place to ensure that the dollars of the replacements for federal dollars is for the federal work that has been scoped. So we balance that in a management, the plan, and the design details and the collaborations with our team. I think the observation made by the examiner in regards to this is a system. It's not as easy, but it's complex, but it's a dynamic that we're maintaining every single day to balance that decision-making and information that comes in. But in context, that's basically how we are managing that day to day.
Right, but then, you talked with Mr. Hempling about the criticality issue informing some of the non-federal capital. But didn't the criticality examination also come into the determination of how to decide which projects to seek federal funding for?
That's correct. It's incorporated in that, what I explained on the input that comes in from the operations team, from the inspections, which is where this question was originated from, is part of the criticality. As we're learning more from the system, we're all learning also the conditions of the assets, what's happening, right? The system continue being operated, the system continue being utilized, the system continue being added more resources to it, adding more renewable resources attached to the system. That has an impact, and that is managed through that input process and make those determinations based on criticality on how to prioritize which work is going to be executed with those dollars.
But is the criticality becoming worse, or why is it that that wouldn't have just informed, a larger ask for federal funding on the distribution side?
I think it's both. Just let me start there. It's both of them. It does inform, and there's an ask in regards to the scope. Once a project is obligated, it's a quantity on it, and what are you going to get done? Let's say, as an example, we have 40 feeders on that particular group. But those 40 feeders are included in that group. We're going to do a specific work that we outlined that we're going to do that is covered under that grant. Let's say we add more, just from a context, we will actually have to revise that obligated project and make sure it gets approved and get it through the process. That could be done at any stages of the process. It's called revisions to the scope, and then we have to justify that. And as mentioned by my last question, it was asked of me, is FEMA is the one that decides the legibility, not LUMA. So we have to maintain that forethought as to what we're including, what not, as we're doing upgrades and we're making decisions from a criticality balance with the type of work that is being done, balance with where the fundings need to come from that is justifiable.
I mean, my understanding of probably one of the primary reasons that FEMA did the block grant as opposed to going asset by asset, where you had to show damage, was that, the system didn't really have enough data to even be able to tell, was it damaged by the hurricane or not, right? So there is quite a bit of flexibility, I guess, in terms of what do you decide to apply for FEMA funding? Is that correct?
I want to use a different word in flexibility, if I may, just
Sure.
because I don't think it's probably the right characterization. I think you are correct to say that when the grant was applied, there was not a lot of details associated with the system. That is correct. And still that to be the case. We are learning more about the system, but we have a responsibility then to associate the damage with the event at the desk level. One thing is to say it at the broad level, but when I said at the desk level, I mean, I have to be able to demonstrate that Hurricane Maria did impacted that particular infrastructure for it to become eligible to the process. We do everything we can to ensure we can demonstrate it to the best of our abilities, but it ultimately is FEMA that makes that determination. So there's no crossing on where that damage has occurred. And there has to be clarity to say, yes, someone has to be able to say yes to, I have enough information that can justify that you're adding that additional pole or additional asset or that was not included in the original description of the work that is, or the group that has been outlined.
Can you give specific examples of criteria that FEMA applies and maybe an example of where on the distribution side specifically, where LUMA thought that a particular segment of lines or area would be eligible for funding and FEMA declined basically to accept that?
Don't want to defer. I was wondering if we can have this as part of the conversation when we talk about FEMA, because we'll be a lot simpler, but I could make an attempt to give you an example, but I don't want to divert much to it. It's totally up to you. But we can have a situation, and again, I'm using a hypothetical example because I don't have anything in front of me that comes to mind, in which you have a pole structural that you are replacing it. It happened to be a steel pole. But we are going to completely replace it because the pole itself is structurally, we did a assessment or some engineering analysis that determined that the integrity of the foundation is not appropriate based on what we're building to. So we'll have to submit that replacement, and it's likely will, and again, I'm using the word likely because I don't know. They will have the determination. They can say, no, it's a steel structure. You're not providing enough evidence that that damage of that foundation did occur and associated with the event. Or it's not necessary because it withstand X, Y, and Z. The grant doesn't say what to build to, right? There is a conversation we're having with FEMA to say, hey, here's the standards we're constructing the system to be. And that conversation needs to be for the adequacy of what we're doing and whether or not it's reasonable. So there's a reasonable assessment that needs to be made and independent verification. So it's not as simple as Luma says is eligible, that it actually makes it so. So that's the challenge that we continue facing with the process. But I just give you an example of a case that could be discussed. It's like we believe it should be because from an engineering perspective gives us this value, but they might decide no, that pole should not be included and it could be removed from the scope.
And then I guess my final question on this kind of area is, what happens, you talked earlier about, the criticality, or even on the operational side, a pole fails. What happens if that pole is on a circuit that is in the FEMA pipeline, but not, maybe not obligated yet, or funds aren't available yet, and then you have to make that repair? Basically, as I understood your testimony, it was using non-federal funding. Is there a reconciliation for that, or how does that work?
You use the right word. There is a reconciliation of that when it does occur and that particular asset was in the scope.
So you could put that to FEMA subsequent to making the non-federal investment and then get reimbursement.
Work's completed so long that all elements associated with it are cost reasonable, and the cost associated with it from what the replacement was up to the permanent work meets the criteria set by them.
So is there a specific office within Luma or a specific person whose special job is seeking these post-cost incurrence reimbursements?
Yes.
How does that process work?
I'm sorry, but can you repeat what process of
seeking reimbursements after the spending has occurred, which is, of course, important to the 5 commissioners. Tell us a bit about that process and who's responsible for it.
So we do have what is called Federal Funds Office. That group has a team that is responsible for reconciling that. I will describe it at a high level, and we can go in details during the FEMA discussion.
Well, you can leave it for now. I wanted to make sure to flag it that there is a team that's actually responsible for these post-cost reimbursements. That's what you just said.
That is correct. There is an organization that exists.
I got your answer. I'll make a note to pursue that further on the federal funds panel.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just, I guess, one other follow-up on, we talked about these worst performing feeders, and I think Mr. Burgermeister, you said that, it's a small subset of the total distribution system. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So just to help me understand kind of at a somewhat high level, the magnitude of the budgets that we're looking at here. Mr. Hempling was asking, for example, about for the non-federal funding category under distribution pole and conductor repair, it's called project name, but I guess it's a cost category called pole replacement. And that for fiscal year 26, that has 34.5 million in it. And then in 27, that goes to 120 million. And in 28 as well. This is in the unconstrained budget. If you look at the
you could
this is
205?
yeah, this is 205, sorry. And this is on line 10 in the non-federal capital worksheet. Excel line 110. Are you able to see
Yes,
those
we have
numbers I referred to?
Yes, have it.
And then this is a little complicated, but if you go to the federally funded FEMA worksheet. And I don't know how to do this, how they can do this, other than I could ask you to just accept my number subject to check, because you have to actually do some filtering in the spreadsheet, which I don't think we could realistically do with this display. But if I do a filter just on distribution, pole and conductor repair, which I guess includes partly pole repair and conductors. But for fiscal year 26, that's $89 million. So just at a high level, the pole replacement that that the commissioners are being asked to approve for the non-federal capital is about a third of the total federal funding. So how can I reconcile that? These worst performing feeders are the ones that we're doing the detailed engineering and the critical investments that we have to make that we can't wait for FEMA, that those are a third of the total capital that we're doing federal funding for. It just seems like I'm just trying to understand how to reconcile, I guess, that the magnitude of why there's so much critical assets that we have to invest in immediately.
I just want to state for the record that the witnesses have not been able to do the calculation using the spreadsheet. So I want the record to be clear whether they agree with the portion of the question on the assumptions on the numbers.
Just answer the question.
I was going to get to that. So I think I'm going to repeat the question that I'm going to answer to get an idea, which is the following. A few words, which is essentially is you have a split. You have a split between FEMA, you have a split between FEMA with the non-federal capital. You want to understand what it's in them. Does that summarize your question?
I want to understand that, and I guess I want to understand why the magnitude of the non-federal or of the non-federal funding seems somewhat large compared to the total. If that's driven by this criticality,
then it is driven by the as well. Let me just
again. I don't want the record to be confused. The assumption on what the magnitude, the amount of it, the witness needs to be in position to agree or disagree, laying the foundation for him to be able to answer.
Make his answer depend.
I am not. I'm going to start by saying that in my testimony, I provided a quantity of many poles that are in the system that we need to replace. How many we're replacing this year? And upon a quantity basis, it will give you a sense of the criticality and the magnitude of the problem. The second part on the FEMA obligation process, we are actually either have obligated projects or projecting obligations in our budget, which means we are in the process of all the projects that are being submitted that we're expecting that dollars will come in, and they can be outside of the circuits that we're targeting because we're prioritizing that work because we believe it has to be done now, right? From a criticality perspective. So that's how we're segregating it at a high level. Again, I don't have something to be able to give you the two lists so you can reconcile pole by pole, because we're talking about thousands of poles that have been assessed, thousands of poles that have been categorized for criticality, in many of the circuits, even though Kevin had mentioned that it's a small subset of the circuits, it does not mean it's a subset of the miles of circuits and the quantity of poles that are in this circuit. Please do not underestimate how many poles are in a particular circuit in the island of Puerto Rico. I just want to make sure that we don't cross ourselves on that context and trying to quantify by simply numbers. There are thousands and thousands of critical conditions that exist on the island. We are doing everything we can to balance those, particularly with the biggest impact on this.
yeah, thank you.
Roger, this is Commissioner Ramos. Excuse me. Out of the $34.5 million allocated as NFC for pole replacements, would you say there is a portion of that Luma will pursue or might pursue or could pursue to get obligated to federal funds?
When I'll use the word could pursue. I cannot give you a exact, but we could, and we always will.
Could you give an approximate amount or percentage that you think?
I respectfully say, and let me answer your question. I respectfully say I cannot give you here what FEMA is going to do. I have to be very respectful for the audience. And here I can only attest to as Luma representative to the work that Luma can do and Luma is doing or all that we're pursuing, but I cannot give you a percentage of what FEMA will do. We have 500 projects that we have submitted, but only 209 have been obligated, and we have a lot of challenges to get access to those funds, and I'm not using that as an excuse. I understand, but I cannot give you a percentage of how many of them. I cannot.
Okay, I understand that, but I would assume that if you have a pole that you replace that's within a project that will eventually be obligated, then that pole would most probably be included, right? And that would make it reimbursable, I guess, through a FEMA grant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Objections, lack of foundation on the record and seeking speculation.
Just answer the way you can answer it, sir.
Well, wait, and I'm going to answer the way I can, which is going to continue being, I cannot, from an engineering perspective, respond to your question with accuracy, which is what you're seeking from me. I can't, because we have to look at the situations and the circumstances and the facts surrounding what the replacement is. And there are thousands of them that we have to pursue. And that's how this was prioritized and split. And I'll remind everyone, which is the question you asked me originally. There aren't enough sufficient funds. There's $4 billion, a specific $4 to $5 billion for distribution, and there's more work than that and more critical work than that. So it's a balance that we're striking. In the event that the work can actually be obligated, we will pursue it. But we are not going to be able to have access to those funds in months at a time.
In concerning poles and poles replacement, is there a difference between the industry standard and codes?
Can you rephrase the question? The difference in regards to what we're doing?
Yeah.
So the answer is
replacement.
that
There's a difference for pole replacement.
that is correct. The answer is yes. There is a difference in it.
And when you replace a pole, you comply with the code, or you have to, even if it complies with the standard, industry standard, but it's not up to code, do you replace it?
We replace it so it actually complies with code. We have an obligation to ensure everything means National Electrical Safety Codes, as an example, IEEE code, and the standards are actually derived based on the codes on what we are implementing.
Even if it complies with industry standards, so
When we say industry standards, if I may, to help you clarify, we're referring to is a broad term in regards to the codes that governs the electric industry, right? The National Electrical Safety Code is one of them. IEEE standards associated with how to construct lead some of our, and also specifications in how to manufacture. You develop what is called a standard, which is a grouping of all these things to make a determination. This is how Luma is going to do it. And collectively, right, each industry, right, it's not like everywhere you use the same. So we actually define that to integrate it into Luma system. So we create a standard that covers all the codes, that complies with all the codes, and also the expectations of the grant. So we're able to replace the existing assets, bring them up to code, and ensure it meets the expectations of the grant, such as wind resistance, right? Which hurricane resistance, 160 miles an hour pole. I'll give you an example to help you. You don't need 160-mile poles in Michigan, right? But you do need to ensure that the loading on the hardware on a transmission line withstands eyes on it, and the event that is called galloping conductor, which is very commonly happening when you are in a snow type of environment. So what you adopt the standard is applicable to the region and what you're building. That's why when we talk about industry standards, you have to differentiate the need, and you consider the climate, you consider all the other aspects of how to restructure the system. Hopefully that helps clarify when we refer to codes. You have minimum codes to abide to. Standards are established based on what are the needs of the system.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Melendez, here's something else I'd like you to think about between now and the federal panel. What the commissioners are going to need when they write their final order is a way to verify objectively that LUMA actually does maximize federal funds. Because what we're getting from you today, and I mean this not in any critical way, is that you're doing your best. It's what I say when I send a bill to my client and say I'm minimizing costs, and I get this huge bill because I put a lot of hours into this case. It's very hard for them objectively to decide if I really am minimizing their cost. We're going to need some, and this again, not meaning to criticize you at all, we're going to need something about procedure, something about criteria, something about internal standards, something about internal accountability that the commissioners can use to put into their order when they make a finding that LUMA has or has not maximized. So I know you're doing your best today to say we're doing our best, but we're going to have to find some way between now and the federal funds panel to discuss this with somewhat more precision. Not looking for an answer now because I think we can use the time between now and then. Something you wanted to say, sir?
I do want to
Yes.
say, I don't necessarily agree with me stating, not stating we're doing our best. What I'm stating here, I just want to put the record. That is not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. What
Okay.
I'm saying is LUMA is doing what LUMA has control over, access to FEMA funds and how those determinations are made. It's not something that LUMA has control. What we do have control over, we'll continue doing. And I agree with your statement. It's not enough. I totally understand your statement, but I did not say, and in no way, shape, or form have characterized that I'm doing my best.
All right.
We're doing the right things.
I think we're communicating in that we're going to need to get somewhat closer to objectivity and accountability in this area. And again, I do not mean it as any criticism of LUMA or of your presentation today, but we do have to do better, all of us. Thank you. Because we need to have less skepticism within our consultants, and you need to have more confidence that we're going to trust your efforts. That's what I'm getting at.
We agree.
For the non-federal capital budget across the distribution functions, is there any portion of it that's based on just like an estimate of what might happen, or is it all based on some kind of engineering or inspection type analysis?
Can you restart the question? I didn't get the first part.
I said just for distribution category in general,
Mhm.
is there any portion of the non-federal capital budget that is based on just, an estimate of what might happen or what's going to be needed, as opposed to being, more specifically driven by inspections or engineering analysis or, operational failure and objective data?
And I want to make sure I'm speaking on the right category. We're talking about the distribution broadly as
I'm talking broadly. We could ask this question.
So-
I guess I can ask it broadly, or we can go, account by account.
So what I'll do is I'll answer in two parts, so you can have a clarity on what we're referring to. If we're talking about pole replacements, we do know how many poles we're going to replace because we have a list on the next 3 years. So there is more precision into estimating that because it is an ongoing project. When we're talking about a line rebuilt, as an example for which there's an engineering process that needs to take place to ensure you determine the foundation types and all the things you have to do, which is more complex on the distribution system. They might be in different stages. The project could be in the design phase, which email altered the actual estimation as you continue doing detailed design. As you are familiar with, from a project management institute, there are various precisions and accuracy and risk that a project has at the different stages. The closer you get to class 3, class 4, class 1 through 5, the more precision you have on that estimate as you are the evolution of the project. There are some in future years that have that level of estimation included on it. That's what they are estimates. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. So under the distribution, there's a regional reliability improvements line item, I believe it's line 141 of Exhibit 205. Could you give me a description of what's in that cost category?
Yes, I could give you a description of it. When we say regional reliability improvements, we have an engineering organization that serves the 6 regions that we have on the island that manage a lot of what in reference to the mainland, what electric services, right, very close to the customer related work in which they are reliability improvements that are identified on those areas that need to be made, things that are not built up to code. That group focuses a lot on the very close to our customers, right, in a day-to-day basis, that they don't do large projects. It's just a group of those fundings. That's what you see right there. If I'm not mistaken, $3.4 million is typically what we're seeing. Some reliability improvement comes as a result of modifications that customers are making to their facilities that result after inspection. We're identifying that does not meet code today, and there shall be meeting code today. So we are making reliability improvements to meet code for serving customers. That's what that group of dollars is.
Can you give an example of when you say reliability improvement, that's reconductoring or it's?
It could be, yes, I could. It could be reconductoring. It could be a replacement of a transformer that actually has, is damaged physically, right? It's physically damaged, that by adding the load that you're going to add, it will actually worsen the situation. So that is a reliability improvement. The customer is being served at the moment, but yet once you add or make modifications, the deficiencies that the transformer may have physically make it worse. So we actually allocate funds and make sure that we replace a transformer or a reconductoring to ensure ampacity is available for serving the load.
Maybe the most efficient way to go through this would be if you could go to starting at line 109 in the non-federal capital worksheet on Exhibit 5 or 205.
Yes, 109.
So the first, at line 109, the project name is listed as programmable repairs. Can you give a description of what's in that cost category?
I will have to look into and ask my team specifically on this one because I don't have the full description top of mind. So I apologize for that. So I don't want to provide you an answer that it doesn't have the context on it. I believe these cost categories descriptions were provided. Paul.
Then moving to line 111, engineering, distribution, corrective maintenance, priority 2. Can you give a description of that, or you don't have that as well?
In the case of corrective maintenance, it's just we have several layers of priority. And we are talking about corrective maintenance is whenever the team in operations identify items that need to be corrected, we prioritize them and make sure that they get funded from these funding sources. It's very straightforward.
So this is capital that's needed to carry out the maintenance, or how do I interpret that?
It's basically when it's a capital qualified activity to make a correction, then that correction could be a replacement of that asset. And that when you put a new asset, you're not going to, right? It's not a maintenance activity. It's actually a full replacement. And that is corrective in nature. There might be parts and components associated with that replacement, such as a switch, and you're basically going to buy it new. You're going to build it to code. That is a capitalizable activity.
Thank you. Then line 112 is engineering, distribution, out of service, priority 2. Is the out of service, those are similar to what we talked about for the transmission lines, they're
The-
long-term out-of-service feeders?
The same goes into this, that is out of service and might be jumpered. You may have a regulator in the middle of the road and it's being jumpered, or you may have a capacitor that has been jumpered, a fixed capacitor in the distribution system that may have failed. It gets jumpered and you continue providing the service. You may have disconnects that were jumpered. That's pretty much it. That we're bypassing it, still needs to be replaced. We're bringing it back to its intended design because there's a reason it was installed.
But are these feeder circuits that have been out of service for a long time, or they're the way you just described it? My interpretation was they're going out of service as you
No.
know as we move forward.
They are. These are. When I say out of service for that funding category that you just described, they are out of service. There are parts in the distribution system that sections of it's out of service, and also components such as a fixed capacitor, that is a line capacitor that you actually have in the system. I say this because I drive by them every weekend. When I go and see my family, I see several of them that are jumpered that need to be addressed because it's affecting performance of the circuits and reliability when it comes to voltage service. The same with regulators. So those get assessed, study, and then we have the corrective maintenance reliability project defined and added to it. Any dollars associated with this year's, it's basically a dollar that is actually already either engineered or in the process to be engineered. In some cases, if I may, just to help with, in some cases, it has nothing to do with Maria. Some of these components have been out of service prior to Maria.
And then the 3-year budget here increases, I guess looks like maybe 40% each year between fiscal year 26 and 28. So that just means Luma is going to be putting more of those out of service feeders into service over that 3-year time frame.
That is correct. More components will be actually put back in service. These cannot be associated. Some of these, I'll say, cannot be associated with any of the events, federally declared events, and that's what we're trying to also accomplish. Particularly, when I'm making reference on these particular line item that you are addressing, it could be conductors. To be some reconductoring needs to happen. The majority of this has to do with static capacitor banks to support voltage. We are seeing also impact associated with the renewables. All that gets study integrated, and then the solution is to replace it and modernize it to make sure it is adequately providing the service as of the needs today and in the future.
And the fact that the system's been operating without these circuits means you're just routing the power somewhere else, or is that part of what's creating some of the reliability issues?
The latter. That's part of what creating reliability issues when we're jumpering or doing temporary work. And in some cases, the power quality, right? And then one thing is to have power, and the other one is the power quality. The power quality is inadequate.
This Commissioner Ramos, if that's the case, and you're putting back into service assets that are already in a feeder that are not working, capacitor banks or similar, it would make sense to taper down. But I see that it's increasing. 27 is twice, and then 9 million, 10 million. So if there's assets that are already out of service and you have $10 million on the 4th year, does this mean you already have an idea of the total amount that you need to put all these assets back in service?
We have a very good.
I just have an objection on the portion of would make sense as argumentative.
So the observation you're making, I want to let's put it this way. We have done assessments and we talked about the inspections. The inspections are identifying these things. These things are not associated with the storm. Let's start with that premise. They need to be replaced. The sheer volume of them is significant. That's why you see a ramp up, right? We're starting this year and we're ramping up to ensure the project can be executed, to ensure these items get addressed. We have a fairly good idea, and what we have in the budget is this needs to be done because we have a significant amount of power quality issues. that power quality is part of reliability, right? But I'm just specifically talking about the needs of the system as we continue with the project. So you see a ramp up. We do have an idea on what are the replacements are.
Okay, so these amounts that are shown on the spreadsheet, are these 100% material costs?
No, this is all in. This is all material, labor, construction, design. You know, the planning, the studies that need to be done, right? Each one
Okay.
of them has a cost. So it's a total cost of all these projects across the island.
Okay. Thank you.
Then line 115, 116, it refers to non-structural repairs, priority 1 and 2. Could you give a description of what is in those two categories?
There was an ROI on this, so I'm gonna.
For the record, if you can show the witness Luma Exhibit 144 and its attachments, there are descriptions of these programs that may refresh his memory to be able to give you more details. It's an attachment 1 to Luma Exhibit 144.
Yes, because I want to make sure I'm accurate on response. Yeah.
144. The attachment 1. No, that includes a list of projects. I don't remember right now the particular one. In line 41, you have the programmable repairs that you had asked before. If you want him to look at that one. I don't have written down the last one you asked about. Could you repeat it?
So the non-structural repairs, which include the necessary repairs on functional components that do not. Let me finish in there, if you don't mind, whoever is controlling that. That do not involve the full whole structure replacement, such as insulators, cross arms, hardware, switches, fuses, conductors, and poles. But anything that is excluded out of there that requires some work. And then going back to the programmable repairs is to execute the emergent primary pole replacements beyond the capital availability or scope of federal funds for the program, additional addressing right-of-way disputes where poles were replaced before Luma's commencement.
Thank you. And do you see for those two, the priority 1, the priority 2 categories, the budget in each of the 3 years is the same for each of those two priority categories?
Can you please, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I know exactly what you're asking. Can you?
Oh, sorry, I guess you're on a different exhibit. See, this would have to go back to exhibit 205.
Yeah, thank you.
And this would be, again, line 115 and line 116. It's in the non-federal capital worksheet and it's line 115, 116.
We're talking about on the two sheets on what the funds are.
Yeah, I'm saying, say, for example, in fiscal year 26, it's $5.922 million for the priority 1 cost category. And then it's also $5.922 million for the category, the priority 2 category. So the numbers in fiscal year 26 are the same for both categories. They go up substantially, but they're also the same for fiscal year 27 and 28. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see that. And I just want to, just for clarification purpose, to make sure that we are looking at the same information. Are these numbers in optimal budget or this is the constrained budget numbers?
Yeah, the Exhibit 502 or 205 that I've been talking about is all in the unconstrained, or as you characterize it, the optimal budget.
Okay. So I see what your question is, so I'm gonna give you yeah, it could be combined and be $11 million. The reason they're broken down in two is for traceability of the actual work. What is this priority one that we're fixing? What's priority two that we're fixing based on the reports? It's just to ensure that the work that has been identified and categorized is accurately associated to demonstrate it has been done against it from a measuring of what is getting done. It's more of a administration and executional programs because they are prioritized based on the criticality, based on the risk. So we want to make sure that we're tracking against them.
But are these specific projects that are underlying these estimates, or is this kind of just an estimated cost category that you talked earlier about? You know, some of them may have more estimation than others based on the process.
In this case, we're using historical identified values and the ramp up necessary because we're increasing our identification process. So that's what that reflects. It's an estimation based on the identified, anticipating the more we'll continue to identify, plus covering everything we already know. So it's a combination of the two on what it has been the cost to make those repairs, whether a priority one or priority two.
So fiscal year 26 has $5.9 million, and then in fiscal year 27, it goes up to 17 million. So what's driving that increase?
A twofold is a ramp up, right? The increase is a ramp up to be able to do more as we continue maturing the execution of that. And the secondly is we know we're finding more as we go. So he's allocating funds to be able to execute on that specific activity that is impacting reliability.
Then if you go one line down to line 117, there's a cost category, PRW-distribution pole replacement, March 22 FWD. It's $20.8 million in fiscal year 26. Could you explain what is in that category and also how it differs from the pole replacement category earlier?
I would like the opportunity to be able to dig into this, but it looks to me at this, just looking at this, that isn't a specific project, right, in the name of it, but I unfortunately don't have all of these memorized in regards to what that particular line item is.
If you could show the witness exhibit 144, maybe he refreshes his memory. It's the prior one. Line 49.
I can't read it, so. They are working on it. So this is the execution of urging category P10 and or before 48 hours. So this one has to do with this maintenance. I think it was listed as on the date.
On that document.
He's going to provide you the specifics of it.
Sorry?
He's going to provide you the specific of it. That is,
whether you're going to be able to tell us anything more on that document.
This specific line item, I could give you some more information.
Please do.
This specific line item deals, you'll see it classifies P10s. That's our top priorities. Those are failed components. And this is what we really classify as emergent work. And this is something the operations takes on. So this is a line item where there isn't the opportunity to do any planning for it. There's no opportunity to have engineering involved. We have to go replace the failed item so that we can get customers back on and their service restored. And that's what this line item covers.
But just to follow up on that, so the $20 million, I think we talked with the cost category above that, it was based on historical analysis for the 5.9 million on the non-structural repairs. What's informing this $20 million? Because that's relative to the non-federal capital budget on the distribution side in previous budgets. This is a significant number.
It is, and this is typically the level that we've been having to spend at over the past 2 to 3 years. So as polls fail, so that this is based on historical.
And on line 118, third-party damage, urgent pole repair. Could you explain what's in that category?
I'll be able to answer that one without the document. So exactly as it sounds, unfortunately, we have a high degree of third-party damage related to poles. That's either direct impact with vehicles, contacting cables and pulling down poles. So this is a pole that wasn't intended to fail, but a third party having an incident has caused the pole to fail.
To try to get reimbursement from the party causing the damage?
There is, yes.
Right, your colleagues, we're at the halfway point roughly, so we're going to take a break. Now, is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
No complaints? 10:30, come back please at 10:45. we received that information and we're looking into what we can do to improve the situation. And we're glad that people from the public are watching this. They have a lot of stamina and a lot of patience and a lot of curiosity, and we're going to do what we can to make it better for them. So thank you for, if you have people that are watching everything, tell them we're looking into it. Thank you. Mr. Schiffman.
Yes, I have just two more questions on the line by line type spreadsheet, and then we can move on to other topics. If you, again, in Exhibit 205, the non-federal capital worksheet, Excel line 155 is labeled Distribution System Improvement, DER. Could you provide a description of what kind of investments are included in that line category?
Can you hear me okay now? Distribution, right there. Okay, thank you. Distribution system improvement. All right, so twofold. You can see the numbers variation. We have integrated over 150,000 customers with distributed resources. I'll call it rooftop solar just to simplify our battery system. As a result of that, because they direct connect to the system, we have identified that several components are exposed to overloads, such as transformers on the system, switches, and so on. There is an ROI, I use the word RFI all the time, ROI that provides the detailed breakdown on what is covering on the disk that we can make reference to. But in general, to answer your question, it's just that is equipment that we identified as a result of the installation of distributed resources that need to be replaced and need to be funded.
Because of the reverse power flow from the solar?
That is correct. Reverse power flow, we're having a lot of issues with regards to over voltage conditions that are created. We also having safety matters as a result of these. Not isolate them from you're always going to have it energized because of size of the actual transformers and the feeders. So there's significant safety to the system, safety to the people, and impact to the component level.
Thank you. And then the final question on this line, on line 255 in that same spreadsheet, it's reliability system upgrades. If you could explain what's in that category.
At the distribution system level, we are identifying upgrades from reconductoring that are done throughout the system as studies themselves of undersized. We have a lot of overloaded lines that are operating overloaded every single day that do not meet code, do not meet standard from an operability perspective. In that is specific upgrade funding is specific targeted to that type of planning level assessments in which we're identifying their upgrades, hotspots along the system, voltage issues, voltage violations as a result of what should be operating the system based on the detailed information. We've collected a lot of details in regards to the type of conductors in the system. So our modeling tools are being updated. And as a result of the modeling tools, we're finding more and more upgrades necessary because of that.
So these investments are driven by distribution power flow type analysis?
You got it, sir.
Mr. Melendez, can you go back to line 155 for a moment? 155, please, line 155. Are you there, sir?
155, distribution systems improvement DER.
Right, you were just talking about that.
Yes.
So do I understand this, that the costs that we're looking at in this line are charged to all, are recovered through rates charged to all customers?
Your understanding is correct, sir.
And the beneficiaries of these expenditures are those individual residential customers that install rooftop solar?
The beneficiaries are the individuals attached to that circuit, which all happens to be the rooftop solar. There could be more, right?
Sorry?
There could be more beneficiaries depending on the work, and I want to clarify my answer. You can have 20 customers attached to it. 15 of them are the ones that have rooftop solar. The transformer needs to be replaced. The other 5 that do not have rooftop solar will benefit from the actual replacement of the upgrade of the transformer.
Well, I'm not an engineer. From an engineering perspective, what's the benefit after as opposed to before? Is there more reliability, less of a chance of outage than they had before?
I think I think the question that the gentleman to your right asked had to do with capacity, right? You're overloading. The benefit of the transformer is going to actually fail over time if you actually have over voltage conditions that it does withstand because the design specs did not meet it. So you're actually going to have a failure of the transformer in a very, very near term. So the benefit is not having outages for that group of customers.
Would you have made that expenditure for the benefit of those 5 out of 20 customers were it not for the necessity to do it for the solar panel customers?
The cause of the replacement happens to be the rooftop solar. So I wouldn't have made those investments just because.
Well, I want to flag an issue for the rate design panel. And that issue is, and I'll try to make it more specific beforehand, but the question is, to what extent is there a mismatch? And I mean quantifying, to what extent is there a mismatch between the necessity of the non-solar customers to bear this category of costs relative to the benefits that they get? Because it sounds like the benefits that Mr. Melendez described are incidental to and to the new investment and would not have been incurred but for the investment and the need. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying that in all rate making, awareness of mismatches and the benefits from them are important. But this is one I hadn't thought of before. So I'm flagging that for the rate design issue, and we'll try to be more specific about it between now and then. Thank you.
Mr. Hempe, if I may.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Carlos Fernandez from CESA.
Sorry, Mr. Fernandez.
Yes.
Yes, I knew you'd have something to say. I was
Right.
looking in the wrong direction. I'm just flagging the issue.
All right. I thought we were not getting into the value of solar arguments, because if we go down the path of benefits for the individual solar customers, we'll have to get to benefits for the ratepayers for the exported energy.
Yep. Well, you make a very good point, and that's why, as I say, I have to think about it between now and December 15th.
Okay.
Because I know what I said about the value of solar, but I know what I just learned. And so we're all here to learn, and I've just learned something. So I will be doing more thinking about it, Mr. Fernandez.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being so alert. Did you have something, Mr. Melendez? Good answer.
You understood what I share.
Now I want to talk a little bit, similar lines of question to yesterday on the transmission side, but just to get an understanding of what's driving the cost assumptions, per equipment component, I guess, in terms of the distribution budget. So, how has LUMA determined, what mile, the number of miles or the extent of the feeder repair or replacement that's needed in the distribution budget?
And I want to make sure I'm following you. This is a global question, right? This is not a specific line item.
Yes.
Okay. So there are a lot of conditions out there I call provisional, in which an example, it is an underground service from a distribution perspective, and now it is provisional, not the code. So it represents a safety risk. We have a significant amount of those conditions in the system that are provisionally installed, roughly 100, 200 miles of that need to be addressed through the inspection processes that we discussed earlier. We're identifying non-conformance with either standards or loadability requirements from the circuits. then is identified as a specific line, a specific circuit that needs to be upgraded. There have been a few instances, as an example, in which customers have been added to a circuit, but the actual planning process for that additional capacity did not follow what we call industry practices, in which we do an assessment of the impact. So the customer got added and added so much significant load to that particular circuit that the circuit is out operated in an overload conditions or in mismatch for a very long time. So because that planning to add load has that implication, we identified those circuits as well and needing to be upgraded. Accuracy of what we're doing, and also the conditions assessments that we have collected over time since the inception until our periodic maintenance. It gives us an idea how many we have to replace. We have many of them already identified for the next 3 years, and we're seeing a rate of the thousands being discovered every year. So we foresee that will continue being the case to continue allocating appropriate resourcing for it.
And for other equipment components, feeder circuits, transformers, conductors, similar type process, or what's the process?
Philosophy still, as I just mentioned, is as we get a better understanding our engineering workforce, just to help you, our former PREPA employees are a part of the system, so they have that intellectual knowledge. They're very capable individuals, professionals, licensed employees that actually have the technical expertise. That plus the assessments that we're making, plus the methodologies that we have developed, help us to make those decisions on what are the areas that are out of configuration, what are the areas that are need the upgrades. Also, our planning process is informing this, understanding what is changing in the system, to be able to collectively be able to determine what the investments should be.
And you spoke on the transmission side about using RS means. Is RS means used as well on the distribution side, or it's
seeing changes in cost, and we want to maintain that refreshed. But it's a combination of the two. Historical plus projected plus design plus engineering. Not every job is the same. We manage that volume through that process consistently.
And then, there's presumably, given the magnitude of the budget, there's a lot of equipment that's needed. Has LUMA encountered any issues with getting the equipment that it needs to do these repairs?
No, at this time, today, we do not. There's some poles in our warehouses. We have sufficient transformers, whether it's pat mount transformers, switches.
And then for the, there's kind of a step up in terms of the budget, at least on the non-federal side, relative to, past fiscal years, to the extent that equipment needs lead time. You've taken procurement actions to get that in the pipeline, or?
Yes, that we have either under contract on island, being fabricated, on contract with the slots, on in contract as a scope with various suppliers. So we have that pipeline for both the FEMA and the NFC to be able to execute on it. That is, as of now, we don't foresee any issues, as if we have locked in some of these contracts for several years.
So you would be able to carry out, or you'd be able to get enough equipment at least for what you're budgeting.
We have a significant amount of equipment in our warehouses to be able to execute and on the pipeline.
On the distribution grid automation category, can you explain what driving the budgeted investments on that side?
Looks like we are deploying a lot of single phase and 3-phase reclosers. We're also adding automation to them, which means we're adding telecom infrastructure associated with this that allows us for the integration of these assets into our control center, something that did not exist in the past. That is going to help with the reduction of customers impacted by event, and also the duration of the customers impacted by event, our response capabilities to be able to do it. So our investments are driven. It's not just a component level replacement, systematic view on all that is integrated. So it's accounted for holistically.
This investment is to get more visibility on the system or to be able to isolate problems so they don't
That is-
cascade.
Yes.
And the analysis has basically been driven by that type of a
That
goal.
is correct. Fault locating, isolation, system restoration.
How does the distribution grid automation investments that are included in the budget, how does that interrelate with the wildfire prevention activities and procedures that you're looking to deploy?
It's a great question because it's one of the mitigating factors that we're utilizing on this to be able to isolate, because we can actually add operability to it. It's going to help us to have more visibility of what's happening in the system. It's one of the components of the overall design. Primarily, the wildfire in general has various subcategories that includes on the distribution automation. Our prioritization of where the work is happening is being informed by the wildfire study that was done, and it's helping us to say these areas we need to focus because of the likelihood of these events. How can we isolate the system? So it helps maintain that focus on those high risk.
So in terms of the deployment strategy, is there a prioritization of areas where there's a wildfire risk, or how do you decide, I guess, which line segments or which geographic area or whatever it is basically gets the grid automation first?
Well, wildfire, it happens to be one of the input into the process to weigh in into the prioritization process. An example is if in the southwest portion of the mountain, we're identifying that we have a need, we're identifying that this distribution automation needs to be deployed, then that gets prioritized because it's actually mitigating a significant risk both from wildfire impacting initiated by the system, which impact the public, but also reliability associated with fault locating, isolation, and restoration of customers.
And what are the other items that affect that prioritization?
I just talked about customer interruptions. The performance of the circuit also has to do with it. The conditions of the asset conditions that has been identified through the inspections informing this decision, and also the input provided by the engineering teams associated with it. This is the most valuable execution project when we add up all the elements associated with it. They get, I'll call it ranked or score, I'll say, and weighed in to be able to make that objective determination.
This Commissioner Ramos, if I may. We've talked about worst performing feeders a few times today. And I think you agreed that it was a dynamic list. So what's the criteria that determines what feeder is first on that priority list?
That is a great question, because I was thinking of that when I was answering this gentleman, right? Other than identifying which are the worst performing circuits on a particular region or area, we're trying to do more than one. We're not going to necessarily say, hey, we're only going to do the number one. We make sure that every region that has the work performance feeders are actually properly addressed in a balanced manner with the funds that we have. From when we refer to the dynamic list, is that we expect things to come out, but also we have to recognize that we are using a lagging indicator. What does that mean is the performance of the system gets challenged by events, vegetation as an example, and it's going to give us an indication that we're starting having more and more problems. Operations, the system continue changing. We'll continue adding customers. We continue adding distribution energy and resources. We just talk, and that the dynamic changes and may impact that performance of that circuit as you keep doing it. So the dynamic comes as a result of correcting, but at the same time, as the systems continue changing, we'll continue the part in the criteria, which is your first part of the question, is the reliability indexes that we're seeing in the system. With the help with operations, we have a ongoing, I want to call it task force, that actually assess the performance of the circuits. Every root cause gets investigated to address, okay, do we understand the causes and what can we do about it to ensure we can improve reliability on a particular feeder, particular area, particularly a city, a particular area. And that is part of the input, right? We do a root cause analysis through the team, classifying the actual cause of the events that we're seeing. We group them, and over time, we start saying we're having, example, the jumpers that I referred to. This area has many. So how are we going to go proactively now and begin addressing? So that gives you a little bit of a sense of how that gets done. But it's just indexing, right? Ensuring that the results that we're seeing in the system as changes are being made are actually quantified and then determined, analyzed by the engineers, discussed with operations, select which ones are the ones we're going to pursue across the island, and then ensuring that the funds get allocated to them.
Okay, is there a relation between the feeder reliability metrics that you mentioned?
Yes.
And the Luma clients calling and saying, I'm here, I'm out of power. Is there some type of relationship between that and the operations team that are looking at these worst performing feeders?
When we say, when I want to answer the question, I want to try to make sure I'll respectfully say, right, there is always a relationship, even for the ones that don't call, right? Customers don't always call for events, right? And it's unfortunate, it's in the situation that we're in. It's because our operations team have visibility of the system, so they understand the operations of them. And then, yes, we do recognize the calls. We align them. We meet every Monday. We discuss what areas have been impacted the most. You know, so they provide us input. In which areas are being affected and the why. So it's part of the overall collaboration that exists within Luma. But the level of specificity on that from a customer impacted, we look forward to have the AMI program rolled out, because it's going to give us the immediate impact that we will know would have to be called. We don't have that level of situational awareness to be able to do that. It gives you a little sense of how it is handled today.
Okay, thank you. One last thing. I think Mr. Burgermeister mentioned a cyclical inspection cycle, or like, did you say 3 years or 5 years?
Yeah, the distribution feeders, I said what we're targeting is a 5-year cycle.
Okay. Is that a typical cycle length for?
Yes, it is. And what would go along with that is more periodic in visual inspections that happen more frequently than that, but for doing the more in-depth side of it on a 5-year cycle, and that's based on, again, prudent utility practice.
Okay, thank you.
So just to tell people where we are on the agenda this morning, because I know everybody wants to keep track of our pace. We are on pace, I'm told. So we've been talking about distribution, of course, and Mr. Schiffman has talked with the two gentlemen about pole and conductor repair. about automation, and in effect, he's covered line rebuild and assessment. So I'm going to talk to you now about distribution street lighting. Which one of you gentlemen is the person for that? Will that be Mr. Melendez? Okay. So that is what we will do next. Melendez. So I'm going to try to keep most of this conversation away from numbers, and there will be a point where we get into some numbers, but what I want to make sure is that the commissioners and I understand generally where dollars are going. So let's start from before the time when Luma showed up. And you showed up and you did an investigation of distribution street lighting, yes?
Yes, there was an
Right.
assessment.
Sorry?
Yes, there was an assessment done.
We calling that a high-level assessment?
Is that a question?
Right. Help me understand your sense of the status of the streetlight system when you got here.
I'll describe it, and I will ask if we can have this three conversation. I want him to participate
Yeah.
too in the conversation,
Yeah.
if not, because there's
Yeah.
pieces that the operations team is doing.
Just do it as efficiently as we can do it.
So I will answer the question. So there was a lot of unsafe conditions. When I say unsafe conditions, we have a lot of poles that were either damaged significantly or wood poles that have street lights on them with secondary on them that either they're broken. That's the number one situation we found. We found some that has partial damage. Partial damage meaning the arm that holds the light is broken. We have others that we have the actual luminary, which is the what emits the light, that actually were defective. There were some cases in which the lamp were identified. I'm kind of going through the spectrum of the things that were identified. They are, as you can see in some of the statistics, they are, it's a very complex topic. So I'm going to kind of break it simply so we can carry the conversation forward. Street lights are being installed in different types of poles. When I say poles, it could be on a primary line pole, which is the conversation we had. It could be on a secondary pole that provides secondary services to a customer. Light could be installed just as a street light in the middle of the road on the mountains that does not have any other services attached to it. And that is typically what you're going to see across the entire island. You can also have temporary lighting that has been done that does not conform to the code. Those are the variations of how streetlights have been deployed across the island in Puerto Rico for a multi-use purposes of a pole, as an example. Many conditions that we just discussed were assessed and categorized, or I'll call it classifying criticality. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Giving them a ranking of what are we identified.
1 second. So that's a phrase I hadn't heard before, classified criticality.
Correct.
So not everything is equally critical.
That is correct.
Just taking that concept back about an hour and a half when we talked about variations in criticality being a determinant of whether you're going to use ratepayer funds or federal funds. Do you remember that?
Yeah, remember that.
I assume that when you chose to use ratepayer funds rather than federal funds, you were at some high level of criticality rather than at some low level of criticality.
You got it, sir.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
That is correct.
Well, I'm asking you, which one would it be?
That the highest level will be zeros. Well, it sounds a little, but that's basically what the ranking has been.
Right. But what I mean is, maybe this is too general a question for you to answer without reference to a specific facility, but when you told us that there were times when eligibility was a likelihood, but yet you used federal ratepayer, proposed to use ratepayer funds, where would that be on the 543-210?
Is the actual highest, which is a 0 and 1s.
Okay. In other words, see, I was asking about precision, and that's the process that you use,
Yeah.
if I understand right. I didn't get that from the prior conversation. You have this hierarchy of criticality,
That's correct.
and you don't just throw everything into it. You go with the 0 and the 1.
That's correct.
And what happens when you get to 2? You figure we'll just hold off and wait for the FEMA money if we can get it? Is that what happens at 2?
It's a great question. So let me then answer a little bit because I think it's a very important question, which is we have submitted through the FEMA process all projects across the islands by group, and we had done criticality base, and we'll put it through the pipeline.
Everything that's eligible you submit for without regard to criticality.
It's correct. Everything is eligible is in the process. We also identifying that there are some safety matters, which is call it the zeros.
Safety gets you a 0.
That is correct. I mean, yes, basically, I don't want to rank it as 1 because it's beyond 1, right? It's a safety matter that needs to be addressed. So they're part of the ranking. We have light bulbs that need to be replaced. So we have been able to actually bring the through maintenance, and I'll let Kevin speak a little bit on what he has also contributed to the lining streetlights program.
Here, hold on. I apologize. I may have crossed wires with you. I want to take this criticality 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and go back to the earlier morning discussion about transmission and distribution. And I just want to make sure I understand, when you make a decision at LUMA with respect to transmission or distribution, to use ratepayer money for a project that is FEMA eligible, it's going to be at 0 or 1 in terms of criticality. Do I understand you?
You're understanding it correctly. It could be 0, 1, or 2, depending on the definition of the criticality. That's what I'm very carefully answering your question, right?
Okay.
But yes, anything that has to do with safety and imminent danger that we can plan for, we are actually moving forward to. That's what I'm referring to, 0 and 1.
Let me flag this issue for the federal funds panel. Okay. This is the area that I think will be most useful, among others, is to understand now within these gradations of criticality, how precise an analysis LUMA does to determine that for an eligible project, you will use ratepayer money. See, that's the precision with which the commission the Bureau can use to assess your judgments. That gets us so much closer to precision than saying, all right, you didn't say we're doing our best, but you remember that whole conversation, okay?
That's why I said what I said, sir.
All right.
We're actually working on that already.
Okay, all right, good. Now, then we'll go back to street lighting. Are you ready?
Just give me 15
Of-
seconds. I
of
want to
course,
make a note
yeah.
of what we just talked.
Of course. Tell me when you're ready.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to street lighting. Thank you. Again, without getting into specific numbers, when you decide the investment levels for distribution street lighting, what are your bases?
We also consider the order that we have received. We have an order from PEP to execute the overall transition of high pressure sodium to LEDs across the system. So that's part of the criteria to determine how much work we have in front of us and how much needs to be done.
So if it's an order, you're going to spend the money to follow it.
We're going to ensure that we effectively use the dollars to follow. Yes.
Okay, what else?
The criticality that I just mentioned from a ranking, and also ensuring that we do that across the island, because street lights is a safety matter in the context of providing safety to our citizens of Puerto Rico or even visitors. It's very critical. We are some very difficult areas to drive, and that has an impact. So that plays into our deployment across the entire island.
Right.
So it's not just the criticality, if not rolling out for all that we have obligated or available.
Right. Besides safety, what are the other components of criticality? Because we're not talking about an outage now that's going to mean people can't, store food in their refrigerator. We're talking about intersections where people might have that issue. But what else besides safety?
From safety being the one, and the other one, the conditions of the asset itself, right? It very similar to what we have talked throughout in the last day and a half. You're going to hear the same tone, which is going to be, we are ensuring that asset health is considered in the process. Their locations where they're at. So there is that all that engineering analysis is assessed as we're rolling out this project.
Some locations are more critical than others.
When I say some locations, I'm referring to streetlights themselves, right, where they're located.
Right. I'm asking you, in terms of criticality, does the location of a street light matter?
It does matter.
Okay. Who's the winner and who's the loser on that one?
I don't think there's a winners and losers. I don't want to portray that.
Well, you're making decisions based on who gets what when, based on criticality.
That's what I was going to go for. So when we actually define a project that we're going to work on, and I'll talk specific about FEMA, we actually have a group of streetlights in the region. And then we assign the work and they continue doing the work. And we emphasized the areas that has the highest risk. We talked about safety.
The highest what?
Highest risk, which we talked about safety. So we prioritize by safety and follow on by the next items, basically structural damages
Okay.
associated with it. It's a lot of structural damages that exist. We have to make sure that they are fixed because they might be imminent failures associated with that structure.
So within a particular level of criticality, there's then a series of criteria as to where you're going to put your money first.
That is correct.
And and the main criterion is what? The state of degradation?
State of degradation, the conditions of the asset.
Well, what else?
Other than safety, other than safety. Right?
Yes.
Safety, the imminence of the failure of the asset that will cause damage to the system. From a streetlights perspective, and then you continue on from there.
Okay. Now, your favorite topic in the area of distribution street lighting, how do you go about deciding between funding it with FEMA funds, which has all the delays associated with it and bureaucracy, versus ratepayer funds? How do you make that judgment in this context?
So I'm gonna use the word priority, and I'm gonna zoom out for a moment. We have actually submitted streetlights scope of works for the entire island, from which we have received what is obligations early on, and we have executed that work. So there's been a significant progress.
Okay, I'm not asking about the progress.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure that the entire island has received that, and then as projects get obligated, then we begin assigning it and executing them as soon as we get them obligated. So that's kind of where you're going to your question.
No, where I was going with my question is how do you decide which to fund with FEMA funds and which to fund with ratepayer funds?
So again, all of them are being submitted through FEMA.
All of it.
All of it has been submitted through
Everything is eligible?
Everything that we believe, and we're pursuing eligibility for all of it.
Okay, so that's very important to understand that. So there's no point in the decision-making process concerning distribution streetlights where you say, this has no chance of FEMA, we're not going to apply. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh, that's the question I was asking and you gave me the answer. Do you want to add something? Okay, good. Keep going. So what can you tell us objectively? Okay, believe me, you've got a lawyer. She'll do all the advocating you need. Okay, what I want to know is, objectively speaking, what can you tell us about the status of the process right now? What have you done and what has left to do, and what's your sense of timing?
So we have about over 180,000 corrections that we made in the streetlights in Puerto Rico, and there's more to go. So we have the challenge today has to do with the obligation process. So we have not all projects have been obligated, but all projects that we have obligations, we're moving them forward. So I'm trying to understand what else do you want to see?
Okay.
On response.
No, you're doing great. I think what I understood you just to say is that you're not using or proposing to use any ratepayer funds for distribution street lighting. Do I misunderstand you?
That's what I was going to ask for a second to allow Kevin to speak, because
Okay.
I think that's the second part of your question that I think is going to help provide full clarity on it. Because there you are, son. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, because thank you. I've got a very alert and adept colleague here whose computer just. Go ahead, Kevin. Computer just failed on me, but go ahead, Kevin. Sorry, Mr. Burgermeister.
The one exception that we are making is in that emergent area. So if a streetlight pole is falling, represents a danger, then we will utilize ratepayer funding to go after that and do that. So it's emergent.
Instead of waiting.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Did you say emergency?
Emergency, correct.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just like we talked about before, you're not going to put people in danger just because FEMA takes the time that it needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought I saw something like $3 million associated with ratepayer funds.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that $3 million then, Mr. Burgermeister, is based on what calculation or what kind of analysis?
Again, that goes back in those emergency type elements. We really rely on historical data, what we've experienced to date.
Experience to date, what kind of experience?
So it's the same thing as I talked about with the distribution pole failures. The rate that we've been seeing, the poles fail that we have to deal with immediately. That's how we don't. It's hard for us to. You can look at the condition of the poles, but is it going to fall over tomorrow, or is it going to fall over in 6 months, a year?
So there's
You look at the history.
there's the poles that already have failed, and then there's the pole.
And,
Okay.
but some of them are cannot mitigated. They're in the middle of the road because they blown over. There's a street line or it's impacting the secondary service to a home. It's an imminent danger to people.
Okay.
So yes, it might be included in the overall FEMA project from a reimbursability perspective, but we have to go and execute it. We pursue that and we added that particular cost and we can tie it back to the project and get it reimbursed once it gets obligated as part of the overall reconciliation process.
So Luma has actually assessed every streetlight pole, every streetlight in order to place it into a particular category. I'm not challenging you. I'm just wanting to know.
I cannot attest to that. But we have to assess every streetlight and we'll share why. There are some that are not. There are streetlights that are being installed, then ownership needs to be defined.
Sorry, what has to be defined?
Ownership of
Yes.
the streetlight itself, the actual pole itself versus the arm, right? There has been a lot of design of that. So it's a very difficult topic to give you in a specific how things were done, right? You can add an arm to someone else's pole, and that is a streetlight. So when you ask have all of them have been done, it's very difficult to answer. The same holds true that we have done an assessment and a strong program brief that has given a very good indication of the conditions of the assets and what we need to go for.
It's the first time I learned that for a particular pole, there could be different owners of different portions of it. How many people in this room knew that before this moment? Hands up. Oh, just the three people without lives at the table there. So who are the potential? Let's not get sucked into that topic, but it is interesting. Wait, something next time I'm asked at the dinner table, what do you do for a living? I can say, let me tell you something about streetlights. People be interested. I did notice, though, that you've got a big jump in your proposed dollars between current something like 3.8 million and then something like 11.9 million for 2027. You're aware that you don't have to go through the particular numbers, but you're aware of that big jump, Mr. Burgermeister.
Yes. What's driving that is that as we finish up the program from the FEMA funding dollars, we have to transition that over into operations, start managing, start doing regular inspections of what we've already replaced. So the program will move over from a federal funded capital program over into operations, and we'll see our expenses go up because of that.
Slightly different subject. Some of your poles have third-party attachments, yes?
Yes.
And is there any difference in your approach to prioritizing whether a pole has third-party attachments or not?
And that I'm going to answer that question. The prioritization, not the execution, it does the execution of the work.
Can I hear that again? The prioritization?
For the prioritization, we use the same that I just described. We do document when there is other parties attached to it or secondary, or the pole has primary, secondary, telco, and lighting on that particular structure. All that gets documented. But the prioritization, which is your question, continue being the same principles, which is safety, conditions of the assets, the risk of failures, right, as it could be determined, and so on. The executability of that work is when the complication comes, right? Because we have to coordinate this work with those providers to make sure that the appropriate allocation, appropriate value, appropriate cost gets incurred and executed. In the event that is an emergency, and I'll say this because it happened on my hometown, close to my home, with my parents, which will have an imminent failure, and there was a telecom attachment to it. So when it's an emergency, we
with respect to the cost that you're recovering from customers for the repairs in the context of the third-party attachment pole, there's no, is there any effort to recover the costs associated with the repair from the third party, or is that considered by Luma to be solely a electricity ratepayer obligation? Do you know? May not be your department.
So yeah, it happens to be part of it. And I won't talk about the legal construct. I'm going to answer your question specifically for my responsibility. So when a pole is being utilized for a third party attachment, there is a due process to ensure you pay a rent.
I'm aware of that.
Right.
I'm wondering about the repair cost.
So when the repair cost occurred, is part of the repair cost of the structure because it has been determined that the project that the structure is compliant. So Luma does not incur costs on the attachment itself because they're the ones that do it. We only replace the structure that belongs to the electric utility to put it back in the same condition it was before.
You're the landlord, so you have to pay them. Yeah.
All projects that have to do with capital is.
Yeah. So help me, I'm ignorant of this. What's the relationship between street light repair in an undergrounding? What's different about street lighting repair in an undergrounding context? Anything?
So I need to provide you the context because there's a difference on this. There are some installations out there that were made provisional, that they were originally made of underground system connecting to that service, that then failure of the underground system had occurred and was made temporary as an overhead. So there is that relationship that they are in installations that the undergrounding service has been interrupted and that design, and there has to be a replacement and bring up to code. So we do have those cases on the island. And how the street light was being served as intended versus what's provisionally being done because there was a repair being made and something temporarily on how it's being served. So we have to work on that to make those corrections when the street lights program.
I'm sorry, I'm one step behind you. I need to understand that concept of provisional. What did you mean by that?
I use the word temporary repairs. I think that will help you.
And why is a repair temporary?
Because it's not up to code. Why is it temporary? Because it's actually was no temporary with no design, no engineering, doesn't go up to code, and it has to actually be made permanent.
In other words, you're getting part of the work done immediately so that you're consistent with code, but you do the rest of the work later?
That is correct. I think this is probably one of those educationals, if you don't mind me to explain what I'm referring to.
Yes.
Right. A undergrounding system has a specific intent on design to cover the line. The line fails. You grab whatever you have, or you made a repaired and put it back together.
So the line, so that the
Service.
so that the street light can work.
That the street light can work. That does not mean that installation is the codes and standards. We have a significant amount of these conditions in the system, and that's what I'm describing it as a temporary because it's not built up to code.
Okay. So I think you answered this next question already. We already went over this, that the Luma view is that all street lights are eligible for FEMA reimbursement.
All street lights that have the ownership definition.
That have what?
The ownership definition that we're able to
Right.
identify, and as long as we can cover it, we're going to pursue reimbursement.
Well, can you tell us anything about the share of the total that's got an ownership issue that makes it not FEMA eligible?
I don't have that top of mind right now, right? Because it's at the end of the day, we have to identify the infrastructure and determine ownership in many cases. So I don't have the exacts to give you any more sense of what I just shared or the information that we have provided through either testimony or additional questions.
Okay. Let me get up Omar ROI OPEX-29. ROI OPEX-29. That was fast. How do you like that? Want to take a look at that, gentlemen, and tell me if it's familiar to you and tell me when you're ready to talk to me about it? Omar, get ready. Exhibit 5.12, 5.12, but not yet. Ready, sir? Gentlemen, ready? Okay, you familiar with this ROI? Okay, talk in your microphone. Yeah, the answer is yes.
The answer is yeah, it has my name on it. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, so this difference between the optimal and the constrained, do you see that there?
Yes.
Sorry, you okay? Everybody all right? Okay, you can see it now? Thanks, everybody helping out here.
Yes.
In both categories, everything you're assuming will be funded by federal? Or what can you tell us? What can you tell us?
That's what I was just going to, it's a replacement of components and upgrades of LEDs. Right? And what we're budgeting for in here and the request in FEMA, some will be like the same concepts that we've been discussing. We are going to pursue funding. The majority of these is repairs that we're estimating, as Kevin just explained,
Right.
to be able to execute on it.
Pursuing funding for both, in both the contexts of the constrained and the optimal.
That is correct.
All right. Can you associate what you see in this exhibit, in this ROI with a particular number of streetlights?
When you say associate, I'm trying to understand what you.
Unfortunately, you've got more in front of you than I do. Does that indicate the number of streetlights?
It we have to be a little more technical in this response, if I may.
Just tell me what those numbers are, because I can't see them. I'm too old.
It's replace components and or upgrades of LEDs.
Right.
Replace a pole with or without upgrades of the LEDs.
Right. Don't move that thing, Omar. And what are the numbers on the right? The numbers in the columns.
The numbers in the column, my assumption is the thousands of dollars or I will need.
Are they dollars or lights?
Dollars. I think
They're
that's
dollars.
what I'm trying to, yes, dollars. That's what I intended. I just trying to map this out back to the budget. So I will
Right.
need to look at the budget itself, but that's I could understand why you're asking the question.
Yeah, I can't. I'm asking it because I can't see it.
Yeah.
I'm asking you now, can you tell us anything about the number of the streetlights involved here?
I can at this moment to give
Okay.
you what that will cover.
All right.
It does if it is a budgetary item, we'll have to do the math.
I'm not asking you to do that. Yes, ma'am.
For the clarity of the record, I suggest that the question be read and then to better put in context what the table is saying.
Yeah, if I can figure out what the question is, I'll give you the question. All right, 1 second, please.
Can you go to page 1?
Yeah, we'll go to page 1. Yep. You
Yes.
see any information there about the number of lights?
That's what I was just going to get to. If you see, Luma targets the approximate number of repairs each fiscal year according to the table below. So the actual number you have below, that's what I was struggling with it, is the amount of repairs.
Okay. All right, give me 1 second. They gave me 30 minutes to ask these questions, and I'm at minute 26, so let me just check and see if there's anything else. 1 moment, please. Thank you. Omar, can you get up distribution 62? I'm going to ask you about the next basically 10 years. We'll see how much of a crystal ball you have. Omar, that's DST-62. DST-62. I'll just be fair to people. The foul up here is that our team expert who knows this area, we had not worked out how they get connected. So I'm doing this on the fly. And thank you for your help. We'll try to do better next time we have a third party involved. Okay, do we have DST 62 up? Tell me if you can see it, sir.
I can't tell if it is DST 62. What do you have on the screen? Can you go up a little bit so I can read the title? Yes, that's it.
All right, well, why don't you get yourself familiar with this and tell me when you're ready, please.
For the record, I think it helps if these are marked reference to as exhibits. This one has been marked as exhibit PC 657.
Exhibit what, please?
PC 657.
Thank you.
And the prior one is PC exhibit 752.
Thank you.
Can you please go to the next page?
Next page, please.
Okay.
All set, sir?
Yes?
Yeah, thank you. Are you familiar with this document?
Yes, I am.
You're familiar with a lot of documents. Good for you. So my understanding is it says here that the full upgrades of the remaining street lights won't occur in terms of LEDs until 2035. Do I have that right?
You got that right.
Okay, so that's what I want to talk about for a minute. I'll just read to you what my colleague wrote in this question. Quote, I am wondering why it will take another 7 years to upgrade the remaining 12% of streetlights when more than that number is being upgraded during the next 3 years. That's my colleague's question. What can you tell us?
I love the questions. We did an assessment on what are the remainings. It's more of the most difficult to have a lot of third-party attachments on them. We don't have a clear resolution. Some of these makes it a little harder to be able to do. Also, as I mentioned here, we have what is called the word approximate.
Sorry?
Approximately, right? We believe that we're going to identify more in the back end years. From the scope that we have, we can execute a significant amount of these streetlight replacements, but we believe that this pace will be hindered by the third-party attachments associated with that and how to resolve a lot of that.
So what I'm understanding from what you just said is that it would be analytical error to equate a past pace with a future result.
That is correct.
And that's because you prioritized in terms of what, like low-hanging fruit?
A combination of low-hanging fruit, high-risk areas, and then what is in between. There's always a back end. Projects like this have that natural inclination in which those that are the most difficult, you just want to keep moving. But we believe that is going to be very challenging to ensure that the cost associated with attachments to come back in a plan basis, how is it going to be covered, how it's going to be funded, and how to be executed. It should not be from ratepayers and they should not be from FEMA.
So this statement about this amount not being complete until 2035 is the result of a group by group, maybe not streetlight by streetlight analysis of the amount of time it takes to get things done.
Yes.
It wasn't just a matter of shoving things off into the future and
Absolutely.
trying to get to it as slowly as you could.
Absolutely not.
Did I see somewhere, I hope we don't have to make you look it up, but I think in your testimony you thought maybe the constrained budget would push this 2035 date back to 2041. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And that's because of the constraint.
That is correct.
It's that simple.
That simple.
Okay. Well, that's all that I have on streetlights. Maybe it's well, let's leave the cross, et cetera, till the end of the distribution section. with my fingers crossed, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleague who is remote. And we are going to turn to the question of new business connections, distribution, new business connections. Which one of you gentlemen is familiar with that topic?
Both of us are. We both
Okay.
have responsibility, but primarily is in my area.
All right, let's, Mr. Jorge, let's get, Tim is ready? Okay, well, where is he now?
Scott, I'm on.
Tim, okay, Tim, let's hear you talk. There you are at the upper left-hand corner. Look like part of the freshman class in high school in the yearbook, but we see you up. We see you up there. And Tim, let me hear it loud and clear. Speak up, please.
Okay, I'm on. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
It's not very good. We're going to need to do something with the audio very quickly, or I'm going to have to take over. Tim, you get as close to your microphone. And
Yeah,
Gerardo,
and I'll talk
are
as
you
loudly as
around or
possible.
anything we can do about this? 1 second. What did you say, Tim?
I can speak as loud as possible, but I don't know if that's helpful.
I know that it's not gonna work. Just hang in there. I don't know why I'm yelling. Just hang in there. Just hang in there for a second. Okay. Folks, give me about 2 minutes to straighten this out, and then, because we may just go on to the next topic. I apologize for this. We should have done more work ahead of time. 1 second, please.
Speak now, Tim.
All right, how about that? Is this better?
Perfect.
Yeah, that is better. You're doing fantastic. Okay. Colleagues, you can actually turn it down a tiny bit. They don't need to hear it in California. First of all, colleagues, I want to apologize for our lack of preparation. This was on me. I should have tested this on Monday, and I didn't. So my fault. All right, Tim, we're now going to turn the topic over to you of the
New business?
business connections. Yes, and I don't know what you can see, but we have two gentlemen here, Mr. Kevin Burgmeister and then Mr. Melendez, and they're prepared for your questions. So please continue.
Okay. I'll know I have pretty minimal visibility into the hearing room. So I won't see like hands or anything like that. So feel free to interrupt. Yeah, and just give me just a second to organize. Okay, I'm going to end up starting with, a pretty general question here. So this is regarding the program budget PBUT 38 on new business connections. I understand this covers both some of the operational and capital budgets. Can I have you guys give me a brief description of the what actually goes into this? My understanding is that they are engineering costs. Can we have a brief description of what is in this budget category?
Can you hear me okay? I'm gonna test
Yes.
to make sure you can hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Hi, my name is Pedro Melendez. I just raised my hand. You can see me on the top left on your screen. Your question is in regards to the cost category for new business. When engineering services as in our engineers in the my engineering organization have the responsibility for new business connections to interact with new customers who are going to be connected to the electric system, provide them technical guidance on what are the regulations to abide to, identify what are the connections that need to be made, whether it is a customer at a distribution secondary level, where will the service will come from for that new customer, how much load is being added to the system to appropriately evaluate what type of connection or configuration, what type of service, whether it's a three-phase service for a commercial customer as an example versus a residential customer, whether are multi-home families, whether they are an entire subdivision, whether it is an industrial customer who is actually coming onto island, whether it was a service that was completely separated from the system for demolition and it has to be reinstated. added to the system again. Those are the type of customers, type of analysis the team will do. An assessment will be made to the electrical system to determine the needs from improvements, and that is going to be an interaction we have with this particular customer. There are some modeling that is done using power system modeling tools to determining the effectiveness of the quality of services necessary for the type of customers that is being added to the system to ensure that can be met. And lastly, this team has the responsibility of overseeing a project throughout its life cycle through construction and perform what is called an endorsement, which means as a professional engineer licensed individual must confirm that the installation and the new customer and all the construction is in compliance with the rules and regulations and codes that have been established and agreed upon. To be able to sign off for it and make the appropriate coordination with the operations team for the operations team to proceed with either installation of meters and so on. So a lot of these labor-related costs are part of the budget, and that is the determination of the budget is established by historical, what we have seen on island of requests that have been submitted. Not all projects end up being coming to fruition, but the overall budget is based on historical plus knowledge that we have on large projects, commercial, industrial facilities that are connecting. So that is a description of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Melendez. So, and I believe you said that these are based on historicals. So I assume your future projections for these budgets they're based on historicals, but that also takes into account the number of new customers and the cost per new customer, correct?
There are two things I want to ensure we align on what I'm saying is then you may have current facilities that has been disconnected. Not everything that is considered new businesses, new business connections. Modifications are also included on this budget in which a customer may want to expand their facility. So when we say new business, we'll look at it in the context of an addition of a meter to an existing facility, an existing account, and so on. Want to provide that context. Not everything is new construction, but yes, it's being based on historical plus knowledge of what we have going forward. A team captures in a system, in a database, projections as they provide services to the organizations. And secondly, know that they are projects that we talk about that get recorded as a potential projects, and they will come in the future. So we also have that knowledge of potential projects, and we use that as part of our estimation.
Okay, thank you. For recovery of these costs in this category, my understanding is, a lot of the costs for the more physical connection costs, the actual, poles, lines, conductors, transformers are recovered through other budgets. And there's some level of recovery from the new business customer as well. There are fees leveled on a customer that is receiving new or expanded service. The costs that are in this category, PBUT 38, these are not recovered directly from those customers through upfront fees or anything like that. That's why they end up here. Is that correct?
Your understanding is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. And this is in alignment with LUMA's current regulations on how fees are charged to new customers.
If I'm understanding you correctly,
I'm just going to raise an objection. Yeah, to the extent that this question seems to elicit legal opinions or legal testimony on legal matters.
Okay. let me rephrase. So let me start with Luma has a set of regulations, of standards by which they charge customers for these new business customers for.
Well, enjoy. Now, let me hear that question again, just the first half of it very carefully, because we've got a very alert council here, and I've got to think about the Court of Appeals, right, Edgardo? Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so does Luma have a specific set of regulations or rules that govern what these customers pay when they seek a new connection?
Right, that's a yes or a no question. Do you know the answer?
I will want to make sure that I answered the question in regards to the regulations. So it's not a yes or no answer. Luma does follow the rules that exist that are governed by PREP, that were established by PREPA as part of the interconnection process. As an operator, we abide to the rules and regulations established that are governing what we do.
Okay, I swear, Mr. Melendez, I asked you a different question. Are you aware that there are regulations? The answer is yes.
Oh, I did that.
Okay, and I know you're here to tell me that you do nothing wrong. You don't have to keep saying that. Tim, what's your next question?
No, I think that was a perfectly adequate answer for that question. So this is my last question on this: is when was that policy or that set of regulations? When was that last updated, or revised, or revisited by the company?
If you know, do you know?
I have no recollection. No, I do not know the answer to this question.
Next question.
Okay, that
know.
completes my questions. For my understanding is that we were going to roll directly into metering, which is also
That's
my topic.
Right. It was my fault. Yes, I reversed the order accidentally, and so we're now going to turn to the topic of that precedes it on the outline, which is meter infrastructure. Are you ready, Tim?
Yep, I am ready.
If I may.
I'm sorry. Sorry. 1 second. Commissioner has a question. Please,
Yeah,
sir.
I'm sorry. I had asked Mr. Melendez a question regarding a total amount in one of these in the spreadsheet, and you said that the cost was all in materials, design, labor, all this. These, I don't want to bring up the exhibit again, but the line items that we're talking about were mostly related to labor costs, correct?
What I describe is more than just labor. There are analysis and some tools and materials and equipment the team will need to do this.
Luma inspectors that go out to the field and see what the new service is going to.
Yes, include those things.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm waiting for him to. I'm listening to him.
All right.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that when he pauses with a question mark, you get an answer, and the answer was yes. Next question, sir.
So my question is, where in the Luma petition or budget, where do we segregate these labor costs versus materials costs and possibly third-party professional services costs? Is that in the petition? Is it segregated like that somewhere?
Can I ask you a question? And this is a general question, or this is associated with the new connections question? What you are making?
It is general, because if you stated that all these numbers are all in.
I was answering his question associated with the numbers on the new connections and what that number was. Right. In other conversations, yes, I have answered that the estimates that we're making are numbers that are actually an all-in cost in every single one of the line items that we have. That is correct. You asked for the breakdown of this. I can't answer the question as the breakdown of the financials on how this breakdown. I do not know if it has been all broken down for every project line item in these proceedings. I will have to rely on information it is. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm just being very honest with you. What we are providing from my testimony is what you are seeing.
Okay. Well, the basis of my question is there might be some of these projects that you might contract out to a third party contractor to develop, but some of these projects would be carried out by Luma employees that would most probably their labor cost would be somewhere else in the budget. That's what I'm trying to get to.
I understand your question, and I'm gonna separate your question in two pieces. When you talk about contractors' work, right? We're talking about physical work in the field. Whatever estimates we're making a determination of the type of execution for those projects. So I want to give you that confidence level that the estimates we're making includes how the work is going to be executed at a reasonable cost. Your second part of your question is in regards to the budgetary item from a labor perspective that includes whether O&M or non-federal capital that are illustrated here. When you look at the sum into the total roll-up, you're not going to have two line items that takes this and duplicate it with the calculation of labor. This is the line item of the actual cost of executing that work that includes the labor in it for the work. So yes, the estimate on there is actually correct. That's not how we included the labor cost in my budget. There's a separate budget items that talks about O&M from a budgetary perspective. All the NFCO capital is embedded in each one of the projects. That's how it was done. The other components like equipment and all these things, what we provide is what we have provided.
Okay, so there are Luma employees that work through O&M works, and there's others that do NFC work.
In general,
Capital work.
in general terms, right? You said Luma, and I could answer that. Yeah, they are employees that the majority of their cost is O&M. My team, specifically, I'm going to talk about my testimony. The majority of my resources, 90% of their cost is related to FEMA work and NFC, non-federal capital, from a labor perspective to support it. The other around 8 to 10% is related to O&M. Hopefully that helps for the entire population of around 1,500 employees.
Okay.
Back to you, Tim.
Okay.
So we're now starting, folks, a new section on metering infrastructure. Mr. Cook, please.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. I'll note here that there's two budgets that we are including, kind of covering at once here. There's a meter infrastructure metering like repair budget, as well as that standardized metering and meter shop setup budget. These are going to just be covered together, really. But my first questions are actually on the advanced metering infrastructure rollout program, just level setting, and I apologize if that has already been covered earlier today or yesterday. But I need a level set for impacts on legacy metering repairs. So my first question is, basing on responses to some of the ROIs, specifically DST 27, Luma provided a schedule.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can give you.
One second. Omar, PC of Luma DST 27. I'm sorry for not setting this up ahead. Let's get up PC of Luma DST 27. 1 second, Mr. Cook.
Yeah,
and then have ready. No, it's on me. And also, Omar, then have ready PC of Luma DST 69. But for now, we'll just put up 27. Gentlemen, who's going to speak to this? Mr. Burgermeister?
The AMI will be Pedro.
All right. Well, take a look at 27. Tell us when you're ready to answer questions about it, gentlemen.
You can scroll a little bit and make sure we read it all.
Scroll.
I believe my questions won't require a deep knowledge of this response.
Go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you. So in this response, Luma provides a proposed schedule, essentially, of when AMI meters are getting installed across the island. Is Luma on track to maintain that schedule as of today, or is Luma aware of delays in this schedule that would delay some of the proposed, installation dates?
Yes, we're on track. We don't foresee any delays at this moment.
Okay. Okay, so then given that proposed AMI rollout date or rollout schedule, the number of legacy meters on the system reduces over time in proportion to that rollout of AMI. In other words, if you install 500,000 AMI meters, there are 500,000 fewer legacy meters on the system, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Luma's proposed budgets in these categories, in the meter repair categories that effectively cover legacy meter repairs, those budgets reflect your budget forecasts reflect this reduction over time of legacy meters due to AMI replacements of those, correct?
Yes, that was absolutely taken into consideration.
Okay. And do you know whether the rate at which those reductions take place, is it the same rate at which AMI meters are deployed, or is it reduced from that?
No, it's at the rate that AMI is deployed.
Okay. So because of that, so not only that, there will be, for example, I believe in, FY26, based on that schedule provided in DST 27, there's supposed to be 169,000 AMI meters deployed. Not only are there 169,000 AMI meters deployed and therefore 169,000 fewer legacy meters, but there's also at any given time over the next 3 years, a large number of customers that are about to receive new meters, new AMI meters within weeks, correct? At any given time, the company will be actively switching over potentially a few 100,000 meters at a time, correct?
Yeah.
Can you?
Hold on. There were like three Tim, 1 second, please.
Yeah, my apologies. I was trying to clarify it.
I know what you were trying to do. Okay, I know what you were trying to do. There are about 3.5 questions there all at once. And I know what you were trying to do was set a whole context so you can ask the witness to answer. Do you need the context back, or do you have any idea what he's trying to ask so you can be helpful, Mr. Burgermeister?
I believe I'm understanding is.
All right, well, why don't you take a shot at it? And if we need to follow up, we need to follow up. And for future, let's try to break up these questions into paragraphs rather than chapters, and sentences rather than paragraphs, and maybe even sometimes phrases instead of sentences. Mr. Burgermeister?
The program, and one thing to be careful with when you're looking at these numbers in the program right now for the year is that it's not just a hard number for that year. That's a progression. It will take the entire year to in FY27 to replace 514,000 meters. So what we've looked at is the progression of that. So that will progress over the year. Early part of the year, we're going to see a higher rate of replacement of legacy meters. As the year progresses, it's going to slowly decrease in line with the amount of replacements that are there. So please don't just take on that because there's 514,000 meters that instantly in that year we are going to have that much less. It will be a progression through the year. So we've worked closely with the AMI team in setting up those budgets and ensuring that as we progress around the island, install the meters, install the communication systems that go along with those meters, which come afterwards, that we are appropriately addressing still our customers' needs, both from those who already have legacy meters, new customers, as well as net meter connections. So all three of those buckets are included in the budget for the meter replacements.
Can I hone in on something you said there? Can you describe that process by which AMI is rolled out in a specific location?
This is Pedro Melendez really here. Tim, let me describe an example. Let's start in San Juan. We began in San Juan. We began assessing every single one of the meters. That's the first step, is to assess all of them. So we have assessed over 500,000. As a result of that, we begin in the San Juan area, and as we are starting to roll them out, we are ensuring that the communication links associated with this installation on a mesh network are also deployed, so we can start building the operational technology elements that are going to enable the value of the AMI. And then we'll begin, then I'll use the word clockwise, throughout the island to continue expanding the network, expanding the deployment, expanding the network, expanding the deployment across the entire island. So that is basically how the program is being defined for rollout to allow that interplay, interconnectivity, interoperability. One of the major drivers as to the why has to do with the communication network that must be built along the way that allows for these installations to work as designed, as intended in the scope for FEMA. So that's how it is actually being rolled out.
Okay, and so what you are saying is these AMI meters prior to the head-end system, the information system being fully deployed, they don't operate as AMI meters. Can you say? I'll leave you that.
Well, let me first answer the question that you were referring to, the head-end system. We already have incurred costs associated with the head-end system that we're installing. As the system continues growing, we'll continue expanding the communication linkage. Or
Everybody, wait 1 second. Mr. Melendez, would you like to start that answer again, please? If you can remember what it was.
Continue it. So head-end system is installed, is interconnected. The network system gets installed, gets designed and engineered ahead of time. We'll continue moving with that deployment. We connect the meters. I believe the question you're asking, I'm going to ask it and then I need you to confirm, is what happened with an AMI meter that is islanded on its own? Is that what you're trying to ask?
That's where I'm going, yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna want to be very, very clear. The AMI project requires us to make sure as we're rolling it out, we're actually interconnecting these assets. We're not going to leave stranded assets out there because the program requires that interconnectivity because it's part of the verification process to integrate it into our billing system so it actually operates. I want to make sure that that is the expectation as we roll it out. We are going to face situations along the way where the customer premises equipment is not ready for the installation, and which means that the customer cannot receive the meter because it's either damaged or the bases or what they belong to them is not ready. We'll continue with the rollout, and then we'll come back and continue connecting. It's important that know that's why we're doing a pre-assessment, and that we've done 500,000 assessments already or more to understand what are the needs, and that is a physical inspection, physical documentation, and integration on the system ahead of time. So to Kevin's point, if I may, is this is not a one and done. This is a program, a rollout. It has a rate of installation. And at the end of every year, we're targeting for these numbers to continue to roll this out in this scale that is shown here. Note that beyond FY 2028, there's still 261,000 that we believe are going to be hard to get areas, hard to execute areas. It's going to help us to adjust. But the majority of the program will be rolled out within the calendar years that we are outlining here.
Okay, thank you.
And it's federally funded 100%.
Okay.
It's obligated and it's in process. Yes, sir.
Next, Tim.
I'm sorry, I have something regarding that same point. Is it 100% mitigation funds?
In regards to the funding, is a great question. We are actually working through the splits to understand what can and cannot be with FEMA to ensure that there is a part of it that could be hazard mitigation or 428. That's your question, right? 420. We are working through that. There is a portion we believe that should actually move to the other funding source.
The majority?
I unfortunately cannot answer that question. I cannot speculate on where it's going to land. We can discuss that when we get to the FEMA discussions right now, because I can't answer right now how
The
much.
federal funds panel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. I'm trying to understand a little bit better of what happens with the AMI meter installations that are on the front end. So when an AMI meter is installed, how long is it typically before communications to that meter come along or are installed, or is it that the information system is in place prior to the installation of the meter?
The latter. The information is available. The information system is available. The telecommunication infrastructure is available. The installation is made, and we actually test to ensure we do a readout when it gets installed as well. And we troubleshoot any potential issues that may result, because these are mesh networks, and those who understand, not everything, right? It's not a perfect world, but we are doing that rate of, it's called rate of read, percentage-wise, to be able to have the ability to read these meters and understand them. We also have them pulse back, which is call home. I'll call it call home. Basically, to verify that they have the connectivity. That it's done as part of the rollout. We don't leave meters sitting back. We do have a specific process that has been outlined to ensure that we can continue moving forward. Those issues, when they occur, get addressed.
And following up on that, without that information system in place, what is an AMI meter's capabilities? It would have to be manually read. What capability does it have?
Yes, if the communication system wasn't there, which is an independent communication system apart from our current AMR systems, it would have to be manually read. But as Pedro had indicated, we are building out the communication systems as we go, and we are not intending to have stranded meters.
And if I may,
Excuse me, I want to make one
Please.
terminological clarification. I would normally have associated the word stranded meter with the old meter that's being replaced.
Yeah.
I think what you mean is non-working meters that we've just hoped would be working meters. Is that what you meant, sir?
Stranded from the communication system is what I intended.
Okay.
Not able to communicate with the communication system.
Perfect.
And provide
Did you
information.
have something to add, Mr. Melendez?
Nothing else, sir.
Okay. Tim, please continue. And Tim, let me just ask you, not meaning to rush you, how many more questions do you think you have in this area?
I actually have two, but it might be one.
Okay, go right
Depending
ahead,
on how-
please.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put that subject down. I just have one additional question on. Actually, so we'll have to switch over to the DST 69, please.
All right, DST 69, please, Omar. Okay, it's up. Gentlemen, tell us when you're ready, please.
And I want to focus specifically towards, I believe it's the end.
Okay,
Where
just
it
hold
talks-
on. We'll tell you when to start. Where? Just one moment, please. And I'm going to ask for estimates on cross so we can plan the afternoon.
You can go ahead and scroll. I'm good. We can proceed.
Tim, please proceed.
Okay. I'm actually going to primarily address, it's the very end of really the supplemental piece of this, which speaks to the new meter requirement. So in this, Luma states that new meters are required by law for new connections and NEM customers. And I want to first just clarify that this requires new legacy meters for connection, for new meters required by law for new connections and NEM customers requires legacy meters.
So this was written in the context of the legacy meters, correct? As AMI progresses, AMI would constitute as a new meter for those same type of installations.
I think that covers my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim. Stay tuned for a moment, and let's get some information about the I'd like to do a few things before lunch. We'll do this very fast. First, I'd like to get council's best estimate on cross-examination, and let's get that first. Bondholders, what have you got, sir?
I'd estimate an hour and a half for Mr. Melendez.
And I would estimate maybe 10 minutes for Mr. Burgermeister. I would also just remind Mr. Hempling, I think we still have one more subtopic, I think.
Which is?
EV charging infrastructure. I don't know whether you planned to do anything in that, but I'm just looking at my notes.
I have to check that over.
Brady says it may have been moved, so I apologize.
Yeah, I'll check over lunch, but I think that's the correct answer.
Thank you.
Okay, if
I can actually
forget, remind me.
So I believe
ahead, please.
we did not have additional questions on that.
Let me just verify that over lunch, but for now, assume it won't happen this afternoon. Okay, gentlemen? Okay, so we have that piece of information. And then let me share with you that when that cross-examination is complete, major topic on the agenda or subtopic, which is Energy Control Center. My agreement with Mr. Figueroa of Luma is that I'll give him 30 minutes notice if we are going to move to the enabling panel, and I'll be getting some. I will keep an eye on that as we go. Ms. Marcado, yes, ma'am.
Yes, Margarita Mercado. We would need to know respectfully because many of those witnesses are not yet here.
I know. I just said that.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Figueroa and I agreed that we'll give him 30 minutes notice, and that's fine. It's always good to have backup. So there's that. That's the information for the afternoon. Okay. We are basically, I'm told, on schedule, and we're going to stay that way. I do hope to get out of here at 5 tonight rather than 6 because I need the evening to prepare, and you all need the evening to do what you need to do. What, Ms. Mercado? Okay. Just to give you the list of the housekeeping matters that we will address at the end of the day today. Let me tell you what those are in case anybody has anything to add or anybody has any kind of preparation they want to do. This is my current list. As already scheduled, we will start the day tomorrow with the question area relating to the integration of renewables with transmission planning and construction. Okay, we have to determine the time for the vegetation management contract questions, which I don't think will be more than 25 minutes. So I need Ms. Mercado to give me her options, so what works for her people by the end of the day today. Is the dispute between Luma and ICPO that I dealt with early this morning, has that been resolved? Is the answer yes? Yes. Okay, music to my ears. I have to address the request of the Sun intervener as to, you all don't know about this yet, Mr. Faruqi would like to be cross-examined remotely for health reasons. And I would like to get that decision made this afternoon, so I'm asking everybody to think about it. Remember that his testimony has been limited because of our conversations about the role and value of solar, which question re-arose today, and so let's just keep that in mind. I want to make a decision about that. We don't have to today because wouldn't be coming till the 15th of December, but let's see what we can find out. At some point, I have to deal with Mr. Saka's absence, but I don't have to deal with that today. PREPA has an outstanding motion on pensions to which Luma wants to respond. I haven't read it yet because I was doing something else last night, so we will address that, the timing on that late this afternoon. I continue to get questions about transcript. I continue to be happy to see a transcriber back there. I don't have any other information yet about how to find out what's going on. Lastly, I thought I had said yesterday that the witnesses could bring laptops and so they could have all their exhibits looking right on there. I just want to reiterate that they're welcome to do that. This business seems to be going pretty smoothly. I'm going to talk to Ms. Mercado off the record about something related to a thumb drive that I don't know anything about, and I don't know what problem it's intended to solve because I'm not seeing a problem, but I'll be all ears to see what that's about. And is there anybody can think of anything else that needs to be addressed at the end of the day today? Mr. Brady, please.
On the OIPC Luma dispute, could we just discuss how that was resolved? Because we had a similar ROI and received a similar response.
All right, why don't you talk to them offline, and if I have to address it as a formal matter, I will, but I seem to have helped make it go away, or I think the people made it go away on their own, so find out what it's about because I've long forgotten what it was. Is that okay?
That works.
All right, thank you. Ms. Mercado.
Sure. To backtrack, but I have a question. I'm going to do it now. It's an AMI question. It's really fast.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not in charge. You are. You pay me. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure you're done.
Thank you. Please. Yes. Please continue, Commissioner.
Okay. My question is regarding the value of the meters that we're removing. So essentially we have 1.5 million meters and we're going to roll out AMIs in 4 years. So we're going to have, I presume, more than 1.5 million meters that we're not going to use. But how did Luma consider, or what did Luma consider to do with that? And because there is value there, and how much would it be?
I certainly don't have a value for you of how much we think the dollar could be. The challenge with the meters is, yes, there is new meters going into that system, but the bulk of the meters have significant age. So as we take them out of service, one of the things we're doing to help save some dollars, but as you can see from that ROI, it's not significant amounts, is to try to recycle the meters that are coming out, retest them, recalibrate them back out there, so we're not putting brand new ones out into the system. Then when we get to the end, we'll have limited how much is actually relatively new meters out there, and the intention is to dispose of the meters when we're finished.
Dispose of them?
That's correct.
There's not a secondary market that we could.
Not for this type of meter, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Brady, I just want to ask you, concerning your cross, will you have any for the areas that were covered by Tim Cook, so I can give him notice as to whether to be available?
Which was AMI and metering, right?
And also new business connections.
New business connections, yes. The other two, no.
Okay.
I will have some questions on the metering.
All right. Can I ask you, gentlemen, to put those questions at the end so that I can give him some kind of sense of when to return?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Mercado.
Just a clarification, the motion that we would like to address is purpose informative motion on bringing a core 3 representative as a witness. I think you said pensions.
Okay, well, I said what I said, and you said what you say, and we'll deal with it at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, okay? Whatever it is. All right, is there anything else, colleagues? Sir, you introduce yourself, please.
Okay, hello.
You are?
I'm Luis Nieves, a counsel for PREPA Employee Retirement Services. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would like to ask if it's okay with you to have some time to cross as well, maybe about 10, 15 minutes tops.
Okay, do you know what topic?
You
don't have to ask me for permission. The Court of Appeals will require it. You're going to demand. You don't even have to demand it. It's there.
Okay.
And what topic, please?
It's going to be on the criteria that Luma uses to determine if to request federal funding for a project after it has been funded with a ratepayer money.
Okay, can I just ask you a question, Mr. Nieves? Is it a generic question or is it specific to particular lines?
No, it's general questions.
Okay, because I am trying to reserve most of the general questions for the FEMA panel. So when we get to your question, think about whether it can wait till that time. If it's very specific to, that's the line I'm trying to draw. If it's very specific to a particular line, we have our engineering expert here, and that's how we're trying to handle it. But if it's generic, I'm trying to get through a particular amount today and save it. So give that some thought. We'll make sure you have a chance to ask your question, okay, one way or the other?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anything else, colleagues? Okay.
Mr. Hempel.
Yes, sir, please. Nice and loud.
Attorney Pedro Vasquez on behalf of the OIPC.
Hey, 1 second. It's not 7th grade. Let them talk. Go.
We also have just two follow-up questions that we have.
Some cross-examination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else cross-examination? Okay. Let me remind you. This goes for cross-examination and it goes for redirect. We do not need repetition. We do not need defensiveness. We just need nice, tight questions that are aiming either to undermine or to explain. Okay, we're not looking for argument. We're looking for efficiency. Thank you very much. Let's take 65 minutes. Let's come back at 67 minutes. Let's come back 68 minutes. Let's come back at 1:45 Atlantic. 1:45 Atlantic. Thank you very much for a productive morning.